All right, what's going on? Drive time Wednesday afternoon style, 10 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock on this Wednesday. Happy Wednesday to you. It's a nice day. It's sunny. It's about 58, 60 degrees here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, getting ready to turn our calendars to March in a couple of different days. And daylight savings just a couple weeks away. You've made it, I would say, through winter, but what's winter? I don't even know anymore. But hello, happy Thursday. We begin the show with some breaking news, courtesy of the new Utah Jazz beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune. Kevin Reynolds is reporting that the Utah Jazz star Lauri Markkanen has been injured in practice, and he's scheduled to get an MRI. Got to be careful with injuries, okay? Injuries are real, and injuries suck. Nobody loves injuries. But my guess is the MRI will reveal that Lauri Markkanen will need some sort of procedure that will keep him out of the rest of the season for the Utah Jazz. 24 games left for the Jazz. Hope Lauri is legitimately okay because obviously that is a scenario that could really put a lot of it would wrinkle a lot of plans moving forward. Lauri is the best player on this team by far. So hoping that everything's okay with Lauri Markkanen. So Kevin Reynolds reporting right off the top that Lauri Markkanen has been injured in practice and he's headed to get an MRI. Of course, if any information comes our way, we will bring it to you. So hoping that he is okay. If I had to guess, it's going to be a procedure that keeps him out of the season for the rest of the season, as opposed to, continuing to do what the Jazz have done that has got them in hot water. But we'll kind of keep an eye on that throughout the course of the afternoon drive here from 2 to 6 on ESPN 700. Rough night for our local basketball teams last night. The Utah men's basketball team, well, I mean, if we're honest, that's how that was probably always going to go. Iowa State, early on, it was kind of a back-and-forth game. Utah pulled within 2, and then it escalated quickly, and Iowa State never looked back. Iowa State has a team on paper that could potentially win a national championship. They're one of the best teams in the country, one of the best teams in the Big 12, and they take care of the Utes last night, 75-69. But as I said, that was kind of expected. What was not expected was Brigham Young getting boat raced, curb stomped, dump trucked by UCF. UCF's not a bad basketball team. That's a tournament team, but they're certainly not one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the Big 12. And I'll tell you what, man, I was kind of flipping around a little bit, watching some Utes, watching some NBA. I was a little bit late to get to that BYU game. And I turned it on, and it was like 16-4. Or something like that. I mean, they were down 10, 12 after just a couple of minutes into the game. Now, obviously, the Richie Saunders injury continues to hurt them, but nobody played well last night. Like, if you didn't see the game and you look up the box score and you see that DeBonsa had 29, 12 of those came in the final 3 minutes when UCF, it was over. I mean, UCF was up 36 at one point. They were up 24 at half and came out with a 10-0 run in the second half. So BYU falls to 20-8. They're 8-7 in Big 12 play, trending towards an 8 or a 9 seed. Of course, Utah basketball continues a really tough stretch. 2-13 in Big 12. That's last in the league. They're 10-18 overall. Both teams are off until Saturday when Big 12 play resumes. Just a few games left. And for BYU fans, there's one home game left with A.J. DeBonsa. Wonder how that community is feeling about the money spent for AJ, who in and of himself has lived up to the billing, if not has exceeded it. And as of today, is your Vegas favorite to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. But this team is not who anybody thought they would be. Of course, injuries come into play, and that's always a bummer when that happens. So, big one tonight for Utah State, 9 o'clock Mountain Time on FS1. Probably the 2 best teams in the league. Utah State and San Diego State. San Diego State's actually a slight favorite because that game is a home game for them. Jazz are off tonight. They're going to take on New Orleans tomorrow. 2 teams not trying to win here in Salt Lake. NBA basketball, it's fantastic. So we'll get to some other NBA storylines. A really weird miscommunication between Luka Doncic and LeBron James last night. Luka was like wide open. Final play. I don't know why he didn't shoot it. The NFL Combine is going on as we're high speed ahead to the NFL Draft. Of course, a lot of local prospects trying their hands to become pro football players. Some Wednesday night NBA action will be on ESPN, so you don't have to find, the app or whatever. It's on normal ESPN tonight. Thunder Pistons, 5:30. Okay, so OKC's a little bit banged up. I don't think SGA is ready. I believe Jalen's out as well. Detroit's still waiting for the players that were suspended after the fight. But these are the two number one seeds in each conference tonight doing battle. And then the late night game will be the Celtics and the Nuggets. That also should be a good game. And these days, if you have two good games on paper, it's actually a good night in the NBA. Spurs-Raptors might be okay, but every other game features a team trying to lose, which, of course, is problematic. So we'll get to all those storylines. We're halfway through your work week. We're one day closer to the home opener for our little old local soccer club. Real Salt Lake welcomes in the Seattle Sounders on Saturday into Sandy. We'll kind of get an update throughout the week, and I'll use this opportunity to tease tomorrow night's Talkin' Real, episode 2, myself and Brian Dunseth on KUTV. The starting 11 last week, certainly not even close to first choice. Those young kids played some good soccer, but hopefully we're going to see at least a handful of the players that were signed make their debut for RSL on Saturday. So a lot going on a Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully you're enjoying your week. Happy Wednesday to you. Craig Bolerjack will be our first guest, the TV voice of the Utah Jazz. I will bounce a couple of different things off Bowler today. Of course, I always enjoy my chats with Craig. Smitty, live in studio. You guys know him. You love him. 40 years with Utah Jazz, and now he's our very own Richard Smith. Our celebrity NBA reporter today is Dave McMiniman from ESPN, and then the head coach of the Utah women's basketball team, Gavin Peterson. One more game, I believe, for the Utah women before Big 12 tournament time. And they're right on the precipice. We'll see what they need to do moving forward, ultimately, to lock in an NCAA tournament spot. But Gavin, a good friend of the show, always enjoy his time. Craig Bolerjack, Richard Smith, Dave McMiniman, Gavin Peterson, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson. All right, look. During Crosstalk, Sean asked me if I had any phobia at all. And I don't think that I do. Like, I'm not a big fan. Like, if I saw a spider, I'd be like, oh, that's not cool. But I wouldn't freak out. Okay. I don't know that I love snakes, but I'm not like anti-snake. Sean's phobia is needles, which led to us saying he should probably lean into it. And that's where the heroin reference came in. Let's make it very clear. Okay, the official stance of the Drive with Spence Checketts and ESPN 700 is do not do that. Just say no, kids. But you were wondering where that came up during Crosstalk. That's your answer.
Yeah, I was just curious. I walked in during apparently the wrong time of the conversation.
Do you have a phobia?
Yes. I believe we've gone over this a little bit before. I don't do planes.
Oh, that's right.
I have been on a few planes. I can probably count, I believe, on one hand the amount of time I've been in a airplane, and each time not a fun experience. Now, that is more of like a nervous system thing kicking in. I've read all the stats. I know that it's safer to get on a plane than it is to ride a motorcycle or get in a car. But you know, it's one that I just struggle with.
Okay, so this brings up a topic here real quick before we get to opening tip. I recall once upon a time you tweeting out that if you're on a plane, it is okay to put the seat back.
Yes.
It's not. That's obscene behavior. We live in a society. Don't ever do that. So now you have no credibility. I didn't realize that you're not taking. What gives you the nerve to tweet that out when you don't even fly on planes?
I mean, the seats fold back. Now, to be clear, if there's someone behind you who is long-legged or you're encroaching on their room, okay. But these seats lean back. They don't go into laying position. You're not lying in someone's lap. They go back like an inch and a half.
They go back further than that. And just because something is able to do something, you shouldn't always do that thing. It is it is discourteous. It is off-putting. It is uncouth. Do not put the seat back. Don't ever do it.
How you, Mr. First Class? I don't know that you're.
Hold on.
You're
Hold
qualified.
On. Hey, I am flying coach aggressive. I'm flying coach in 2 days, pal. Okay. So I never do it, and when the seat back goes back in front of me, it could potentially ruin a flight. Especially if you have your tray table out and you're like enjoying the peanuts and the Diet Coke as if that's all they can afford to give you. Oftentimes it will spill on top of you if the person in front of you puts their seat back. Just don't do it. We live in a society. We need to get back to decency.
I do maintain that, you check on the person behind you. You see what's going on back there. You're not going to spill their Sprite or their peanuts, right? But yeah, I mean, I think when you got a inch and a half, 2 inches of room to lean
More
back.
than that. It's more than that.
Go ahead and lean back.
What's your opinion on crying children on flights?
Oh my gosh.
See, I knew it. We have to get back to decency in America. Should we talk about the State of the Union right out of the gates?
I know we did this the other day where, there's no bad dogs, just bad dog owners. And if you're not a parent, you can't talk about the kids.
Yeah.
I agree with you. However,
No. You're going to start us off on a bad foot, buddy.
The crying kid on the plane, that's a tough one.
He who has not had a crying kid on a plane to watch after, let him cast the first stone. That is biblical. That's from Matthew, verse 25, I believe.
Especially because, when a baby goes up in a plane, the altitude messes with it, the baby might just cry the whole time. I get it. It's hard. However, there was a situation a few weeks ago where I was at a restaurant. It wasn't a nice, formal dining setting, but it wasn't fast food either, right?
Chakarama.
No.
Golden Corral.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It was La Puente.
Nice.
5 stars.
Anyway, what happened?
There was a child there having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
However, the kid started to, interact with me. I was nice. I said hello, joked with it a little bit. And then the kid started to get up onto my booth and try to play with me, right?
Gosh.
And the parents just giggled and laughed and were like, ah, it was just kind of another day in the life of them.
I'm so sorry that this
no care in the
beautiful
world.
young child with it. Didn't you say the other day that your hope for everybody is to never lose their inner child? Didn't you say that into that microphone?
Absolutely. But if your child is pulling on the hoodie of someone who is eating a meal at a public restaurant, even if that person is playing it cool,
okay,
get your kid away from them.
I'm going to let it go because we've got stuff to do, but you are so misguided. Craig Bolerjack is going to be our first guest right out of the gates today, the TV voice of the Utah Jazz. But before Bowler stops by, courtesy of our friends at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
It's Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of the drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 with Prize Picks.
The official stance of this radio show is we love children, and we love puppies, and we love dogs, and you should not do drugs. I just want to be clear, that's the official stance of the show.
Of course.
Okay. All right, Prize Picks time, opening tip time. You can shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right, Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups. When you sign up and play your first $5, Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. Don't miss the chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. Prize Picks is available in Utah. So definitely check it out. No worries there. A new feature now, Prize Picks has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. Step number 1 is going to get their free money. You should always do that. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, a couple of quick thoughts here. The Utah-Iowa State game last night went more or less how I thought it would go. It was actually a decent – Utah hoops last night had a couple of decent stretches against a team that might go to the Final Four. A nice little comeback there in the first half brought them within 2 points after TB hit a three. Last night, Terrence Brown led the Utes, as he often does, in scoring with 18 points. Don McHenry with 14. Dawes had a double dip. He had 10 points, 12 boards. Really, and I'll give our guy Sean Mooney a lot of credit here. He was right about Sidhu Traore really needing to kind of be that third cog. When he's played well, it has made a massive difference, and he was atrocious last night. He played some pretty good defense because he was tasked to guard the Joshua Jefferson and rangy. They do a lot of switching on defense and a lot of confusing coverages, and their length bothers smallish guards, okay? It really bothered Rob Wright down in Provo, and Rob had 6 points in 40 minutes against Iowa State. And last night we saw it in spurts when Terrence Brown and Don McHenry, who shot okay from the floor, they couldn't get looks. That was the issue. TB only shot it 10 times, and Don only had 8 field goal attempts because they couldn't get looks. They're smallish guards against these long players. So Utah basketball, kind of what we thought would happen last night against a really good team. And I'll say this, down the stretch, Arizona State, Colorado at home, and then Baylor. There's only one more home game. It's on March 3rd against Colorado. I would beg and plead, as I have all year, let's get up there. Let's try to support these young men. But all three of these games are winnable. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, let's get two, okay? 2 out of the 3. One road game, either Arizona State or Baylor. Baylor's probably your better chance there, but neither team is great. And then the home game against Colorado. Colorado's been a little bit of a disappointment. These are 3 winnable games, and with what we've seen from the Utes all year, I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to go 3-0, but let's get 2 of those, right? Head into the Big 12 tournament with a little bit of momentum, because when it comes to tournament basketball, you simply never know. Am I going to sit here and tell you I think Utah men's basketball is about to go on a run in the Big 12 tournament? I am not going to do that. 3 of the top 5 teams in the country play their basketball in this conference, and 6 teams in the top 25 are in the Big 12. And even outside of those teams, teams like UCF, who we're going to get to in a minute, TCU, West Virginia, who Utah beat, Cincinnati, I'll include those 4 teams, all have a chance to make the NCAA tournament, and throughout the course of the year have beaten some of the best teams in college basketball, okay? Now, over to what happened in Provo. My goodness. As I referenced last night, I was kind of finishing up some NBA stuff. I was watching some Knicks Cavs. The Cavs blew the Knicks out of the water. By the way, James Harden apparently fractured his right thumb, but he's going to try to play tonight because, of course, he's a lefty. So I was kind of flipping back and forth. There were some things that were somewhat interesting about the Celtics-Suns game. The T-Wolves-Blazers game actually turned out to be good. We'll get to the Laker-Magic game later when Dave stops by. A really weird final play where Luka, who has hit as many, if not more, big shots as any player over the past 5-6 years, just straight up passed up a wide-open 3 and forced it to LeBron, who had to take a fadeaway 3 to try to win the game, and it wasn't even close. But anyway, flipping back and forth, want to finish the Utah game. And I flip over to the BYU game, and we saw UCF up here in Salt Lake against Utah, and they beat Utah, but it was a pretty close battle. And UCF is not a bad basketball team. I want to be clear, but they're not one of the top 4 or 5 teams in this conference. And I turn it over, and it's like 16-4. I'm like, wait, is AJ hurt? Like, what's going on? But no, like BYU, and Kevin Young after the game was as mad as I've seen him since he took the job. That was a team that slept walk through a game that they thought that they were going to win easily after maybe reading their own articles after a really good win over Iowa State. Now, Richie Saunders was not there. He was not in the building. Of course, he's not playing because he's hurt. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic. The Boscovitz kid who played well against Iowa State was basically a wallflower. Kennard Davis reverted back to the player that we've seen for most of the year. But I referenced length bothering Rob Wright. UCF, like Iowa State, has a bunch of rangy wings. And in the first half, they were intentional to not switch when Rob had the ball to make sure that their lanky defender stayed on him. And look, Rob's a brilliant ball handler. He's very proficient offensive player. He can get you buckets. He's got pretty good vision, but he's like my size. I mean, he's 5'11", maybe 6 feet. And that's not, these days, even if you have like Chris Paul vision or, up and down Brevin Knight speed, if we want to go way back in the day, you can't really play in the NBA if you're that size unless you have some extraordinary ability. And I'm not sure that Rob does. So the length bothered Rob Wright, but AJ wasn't great either. The Kostic kid, actually, there's a lot to like about this young man. I don't know much about him. Maybe that's the second or the third time I've seen him play. But every time he plays, he's very smart, and he can really shoot it from the outside. He may have been their best player, and Kevin was trying rotations that we haven't seen all year long. And ultimately, to me, they just rely way too much on a generational talent in A.J. DeBonsa, who now has moved himself into becoming the Vegas favorite to be in the number 1 overall pick. A.J. to me looked tired. The whole team to me looked tired. They didn't look focused. And you know the weird thing? Keba Keita, who we had up here in Salt Lake playing for the U, follows Chris Burgess down to Provo. I have not seen improvement from this kid. I'll tell you what he is. He is a jaw-dropping athlete, but he has not really learned the skill set to, being an NBA basketball player. Can't pass it, doesn't dribble it, doesn't shoot it. All he does is, and they're jaw-dropping highlight plays, dunks and block shots. But at some point, Kevin just pulled the plug. He went really small around AJ. Cable only played 14 minutes. And the players that they're relying on to fill in for Richie just were bad. The Kadeem Boop kid, I'm not sure why he ever plays. I don't know what he does well, if anything at all. The Abdullah Ahmed kid, who was the G League player they signed, has not given them anything. And this is a team who I picked to be top 3 in the conference and maybe make a run to the Elite 8. And, it is a wild conference where every night there are upsets. But at this point, they're 6th in the Big 12. And they're probably the 6th or the 7th best team in the conference, trending towards an 8 or a 9 seed. And at this point, if they win more than one game in the NCAA tournament, it feels like a little bit of an upset. So a rough night last night for both of our in-state teams. BYU Hoops gets smoked by UCF. Utah gets run off the floor by Iowa State. Big one tonight for our friends up north. Utah State's going to take on San Diego State. That's a road game for the Aggies. 9 o'clock start, so stay up late. It is on FS1. Mammoth are back in action tonight, okay? So we'll talk some Mammoth later on, but we'll catch our first break of a Wednesday show and bring in the TV voice of the Utah Jazz, Craig Bolerjack, coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. several people chiming in on our lively first segment debate about whether or not it is uncouth to lay one's seat back on a flight. And I'll say the responses are split. Some people are with you that it's okay to put your seat back. Some people are with me that I believe it's just horribly off-putting behavior.
Does it help if I make clear that I'm having like a legitimate panic attack the entire time I'm in the air?
Probably does. We should have some context. Porter does not enjoy flying. Now, our next guest almost exclusively flies on private jets, so I don't know if it's a problem for him. Craig Bolerjack, chime in, sir. Seat back, okay to put back, or always keep that thing upright? What do you say?
Oh, look, Spence, I do commercial as well, and it is like, look, I'm 6'3" and weigh, a couple of bills and change, and it's when I see someone start to come back, I just hold my breath, like, how far are you coming?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. I don't mind that first latch, that first little bit. But if they're going to push it all the way back and I'm sitting there looking at them nearly in my lap, that's tough. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and then in Porter's defense, he brought up measurements. Okay, check and see if there's a large fella sitting behind you. Not to call you large, Craig, but you get the gist of the idea. Hey, I get it. Yeah, I actually wanted to start here before we get to the Jazz, because I always like to get your your takes on some of the topics that are kind of permeating throughout the ecosystem. And I don't know if you had a chance to get up Sunday morning to watch the men's hockey team win. Oh, so awesome. So I wanted to get your perspective on just what a seminal moment that was, and then compare it to the miracle in 1980. And like, how do you think we're going to be talking about this team in 46 years from now, just like we talk about that team from 1980?
That's really an interesting comparison, Spence. I tell you what, the Jim Craig moment when he skated with the American flag around him was the iconic kind of Wheaties box picture, right? And the call was iconic. It really kickstarted an incredible career. I mean, to another level. He didn't need a kickstart, but it took him to another atmosphere. And do you believe in miracles? But that was prior to, that gets mixed up. But it was all just a magical moment. And you know what? It's almost generational where these things come back to play again. I just thought the physicality of the entire U.S. hockey team during the Olympics was beyond what I expected. I could tell that they were totally focused and, look at the excitement of a couple of overtime wins to put them into that position and to win it in overtime, both men and women's, was unbelievable. And then the Wheatie box moment is the toothless smile. I think will always be remembered as the poster of the 2026 Winter Olympic gold medal game. I kind of was dozing in and out, I got to be honest, but I had the TV on because I wanted to see what was going down. But these Olympics in the hockey venue, I mean, it was awesome. And if that doesn't kind of motivate and kind of, kickstart some interest even more so in Salt Lake and beyond, I don't know what will. Junior hockey may just, start to really, I don't know, kind of flex their muscles along with junior jazz basketball in this state, Spence, thanks to that gold medal win.
I wonder what your perspective is on why a moment like this seems to be as galvanizing as it is. Yeah, whether it's the Olympics, and look, I don't know that our men's soccer team will ever even make a World Cup final, let alone win a World Cup. Right. I mean, we're a century behind the other countries that are going to be the teams that typically win it. But international tournaments, Olympic Games, hockey gold medals, why do you think these moments are the moments that a lot of people just kind of latch to and we all come together with?
Well, you just said the magic word, come together. I mean, we're so divisive right now in this country. Politics aside, it's a moment that you can just relax and say, cool. I mean, for me, it was like, great. Because you have to look through the politics. You have to look through and focus on the individual and know the work that each one of those hockey players and athletes who win gold, what they go through. And I think, Spence, those are the moments, man. Sports has a crazy way of bringing people together for a moment in time. I think everyone felt Lindsey Vonn. I mean, what an incredible story. And I kept thinking to myself, man, I hope she makes it down the hill, right, after the ACL tear. And you know what? I looked at a picture of Lindsey. I'm going off topic here for a moment, but I just thought about the fight in that woman who wanted to go down and try to represent, her country one more time and win gold. But, man, I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of her legs. I mean, the knees. But she's battered. And that was prior to this last fall, which she's going to have a rough recovery. And luckily, the doctor, I know you've read the stories about, saving basically her leg. But those are the stories, Spence, that I think people just resonate and go, wow, you're doing that, to represent at the highest of levels, to represent your country. And, USA basketball has been in that same conversation for multiple years to put gold around your neck. John and Carl can speak to that, what that feeling is like. But it's the work away from the spotlight, I think, that culminates for an athlete just to be there for a moment and say, wow, it was all worth it because I'm in the moment. And I'm also hopefully bringing a country together, which, again, we don't have to talk about, but as we all know, it's it's pretty hard. It's pretty rough right now. But I'm glad to see those moments still exist because sometimes we get lost in the other noise around us.
And I will completely admit to being a sucker for the Olympic Games stuff. I mean, I love the summer games. I fall in love with our gymnasts. I'm like, this is awesome. This is amazing. Yeah. I want all of them to do well. And during the Winter Games, one of the coolest experiences I've had in my career prior to my media stint now was being one of the venue managers for the 2002 Olympic Games for the Salt Lake Ice Center, and we housed short track speed skating. Of course, Apollo Antonono was the big star of the games with that, right. And then obviously the figure skating, which was really fun outside of the judging controversy. And there was a really cool story written a couple of days ago by Stephen Nesbitt from The Athletic. It is how Salt Lake City evolved into a sports boom town and a Major League Baseball expansion frontrunner. So we've been talking about this pretty much all week long now. Chris Camerati from The Athletic joined us live in studio, and he had a chance to sit down with our governor. And, he talked about how, and this was kind of the redeeming feel for everybody that was on staff, whether you're a volunteer or working at a venue. Leading up to the 2002 Olympic Games, we're kind of like, are we equipped to do this? Are we ready to have the world in Salt Lake City? And I was so proud of how our city and community showed. And now, next cycle is going to be the French Alps. And then they're back here in Salt Lake City in 2034. But that was kind of the first, big reveal to the world. Like, yes, this is who we are. This isn't some weird city in the desert where it's a bunch of Amish people that want to judge you, or a normal place. And I wonder what
You're right.
Yeah, and what's your perspective, Craig, as somebody who isn't from here but has lived here for as long as you have, about how our market has kind of grown and evolved and where we're at today?
Spence, it is unbelievable, to watch this city continue to grow. And the Olympics, you are right, 2002 was the door opening to the world. And people walking in going, hey, man, I can have a glass of wine. Wow. I can, enjoy the mountains. And they found out that this is a geological wonder, the state of Utah. And I was so glad because of that. I'll tell you a quick story. I remember I was on the road in Oklahoma City maybe 5 years ago, prior to COVID, 7 years ago. I came off the flight. We go out to dinner. Most of us have some jazz gear, whether it's a hat or a sweatshirt, right? And a guy comes up to me and said, hey, you guys from Utah? And I said, yeah. What are you guys here for? I said, working. We just flew in, working for the Jazz. And it was an older gentleman and with a couple of his buddies, and he just straight-faced me, said, hey, how many wives do you have? And I thought, golly, man, we still have to work through that, Spence. And I kind of joked with him. I said 3. And he just eyes kind of bugged out, like, really? I said, no, sir. No. That doesn't happen in the state of Utah anymore, despite whatever you may read in, what with the history books. But that to me was like, okay, we still have work to do. But I think, again, with hockey and with the Olympics returning and what the Jazz are trying to achieve and where they've been with Carl and John and the 97-98 run to the finals, those are all pieces of this puzzle that Ryan and Ashley are doing now. The Millers set the table, and I think Ryan and Ashley Smith are trying to, complete and, put a few more chairs, at that table. I was at 2 Olympics in Lillehammer and Atlanta. It's a marvelous thing. I think the security is the one thing that ruined it for me as a media member, because you had to jump through so many hoops. But they have to do that now, obviously, for the safety of everyone included, fans and athletes alike. But it's still a marvelous venue of opportunity, and kind of for a country to bask in the spotlight of the world, by the way, not just the states, but I'm talking the world have their eyes on Salt Lake in 2002, and they'll do it again in 34. It's really a cool thing.
One of the interviews that Stephen was able to grab was with Stuart Adams, who's one of the state leaders, and he had a quote that baseball is the logical next step, and then once we prove that we can make that work here, the next step will be the NFL. Can you wrap your mind around the potential of NFL football in Salt Lake City?
No. When I got here in '85, that was a thought, Spence, that would never happen. The Sunday no play issue was real. And that was something that when I was at KSL was discussed, and everyone just kind of threw their eyes back, their heads back like that. That will never occur. And baseball too. But look, the Jazz had put their toe into the water on playing on Sundays, and you don't see any really seats that are empty at Delta Center. So it kind of shows you the growth, the understanding, and the love of sport as well. Look, you can choose not to go, right? But the opportunity is there if you so choose desire to go. And I guess that's probably the thing I've learned about it in talking to fans. Like, yeah, man, I've got Sunday. It's my only day off. I want to go. I want to be involved with this sports team. And so, Spence, baseball, I thought, was maybe outside of the norm as well. During the Larry Miller, when he was alive, it was one of his dreams. And the Millers continue to really, I think, put that in the forefront to see Larry's dream come to fruition. But the only concern I have, and I don't know what your thoughts are, is that the state is growing, but you start to get into advertising dollars, and is there enough advertising dollars in corporations to actually make a go of the 2 major sports right now in hockey? Let's be honest, it's growing, and I'm sure it's taken a spoonful or more out of the Jazz budget to bring in advertising dollars for hockey as well. Now, does baseball have enough to sustain that as well? It's really going to be interesting to see how it's all cut up and the pieces of the advertising dollar in this state, and how it generates, revenue for each of these sports franchises. And if you add another and then another in the National Football League, who benefits and who maybe struggles? I think it's an interesting topic. I really do.
Yeah, and it's a really fair point. I'm certainly not an economist, so I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine people as smart as the Millers or Smith Entertainment Group or, whoever else would be involved in bringing some sort of entity here has done their due diligence and believes that the dollars are there in the community, whether it's season tickets, food and bev, merch, all the boxes that you need to check for the consumer experience, and then attending to it, enough growing companies to say, well, okay, maybe I'm priced out of the Jazz, but can I afford the Mammoth? Or maybe I'm priced out of the Mammoth. Let's talk to RSL. Okay, so maybe soccer doesn't move the needle. I honestly don't know the answer. I would just kind of cede to the people that do the research here. And my guess is the Millers and the Smith Entertainment Group and whoever else would have those, I's dotted and T's crossed,
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think Major League Baseball would to be invested in that research as well, and the National Football League, because the NBA is talking expansion once again, and they're going to look at cities, most likely Vegas, most likely Seattle. That's just my thought. It could be different. You could see a team move. Who knows what the Board of Governors will decide, but Yeah, there's always movement, Spence, and the money always comes down to play. Like, can this city sustain, a professional sports franchise? And you're right. There's many different avenues and many different eyes that study exactly like you said, economy, the economists who you and I are not, but still, it's a fascinating thing to think of. It's kind of goes hand in hand with the conversation of the state growing at a very rapid rate, the city. And if you do push it south, it's almost like, Salt Lake City the Mid-Valley becomes like Midtown, right? It's growing that way. Where Southtown is now to 106. When I first got here in '85, that was way south. That was way out there. And now when you go down to the point of the mountain, that used to be an empty 30-mile run into Provo, and it's wall to wall. It's like the Autobahn. But yeah, growth has its pains, but what's happening now, it's really built around sports, and obviously some big companies have moved down into the Provo, Orem, Lehigh area. So, I guess growth is going to determine whether or not more sports franchises move to Salt Lake and the state of Utah.
Yeah, I also listened to a pretty fascinating interview with a psychology professor from Michigan on Scott Galloway's podcast, and they were talking about how, with the implementation of AI and ChatGPT and how many things that are now part of our ecosystem that are not real. The human condition will probably just motivate people now to want to witness things that other people are doing because they know it's real. And the biggest example of that is sports. It just is.
Yeah.
And it's why so many people are panicked about what's being called the integrity of the game, because once the consumer does not believe in what he or she is watching, everything is compromised. Everything is thrown out. If you don't believe what you're watching, if you're watching sports is actually a real endeavor, you're going to stop watching it because you think it's fake. I might as well go watch wrestling. But with this new kind of ecosystem of social media and AI and apps where you just are wasting your time scrolling through your feed, this person's assertion is that the business of sport will continue to grow, namely with this, Craig, live television rights. Because so many people, I enjoy sitting on my couch and watching a Jazz game where I don't have to wait in line to go to the bathroom and I can make a sandwich. Like, so many people are just kind of leaning into consuming live sports from their home that these TV deals will continue to just boom and boom and boom. So even like Major League Baseball right now is very much regional. A number of years ago, it was the most popular sport in America. Now it's fourth. But the television money in baseball continues to go through the roof. The NBA just signed a $72 billion TV deal. When the NFL is up next, they can just sit back and say, write me the biggest check, and who knows what that's going to look like. So as far as I'm bringing it up because the conversation about are there enough dollars in this market for people to attend all of these sports? Are there enough corporate sponsors to make sure that the Jazz, the Mammoth, RSL, and the baseball team are taken care of? I don't know the answer to that, but I feel like the booming television money will be able to supplement any sort of lack of revenue generated by either fans or corporate sponsors, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I tell you, when I think about my opportunity, both, my network experience and then local as well, one thing I hope never is taken away is the ability for a local franchise to still give a local play-by-play approach to their team. I don't want this is just me talking. I guess I'm selfish, but I think, fans wrap their arms around their team. They sometimes wrap their arms around whoever is part of that broadcast, and they get to know you, and you get to know them. And believe me, when I was at CBS for those 13 years and Fox and ESPN, every time we came into town, people kind of look at you a little cross-eyed, like, how much you know my team? And, there's some truth to that, because we were kind of put on in a position to study all week and talk to coaches and players and then jump on a national broadcast and try to bring it to you as evenly possible as you could down the middle. But see, some fans don't like it down the middle. Some fans want it swayed obviously their way, and others want to hear it, 50-50. So it's kind of an interesting scenario of what actually will happen. I hope that the money doesn't force out local, because I still think it has a huge toehold in what fans, look forward to and want. But again, money speaks, right? We've watched TNT go away and Peacock come into play, and now really Adam Silver has all three, levels of distribution, Spence, right? National, cable, you've got it streaming, and and the cable networks, and also over the air, quote, as we used to think of it, the old free network, plus the old UFH channel that you had back in the day. So he's got it covered, and there's a lot of money involved, and I can't wait to see what the NFL money is going to be like, because that ought to be an astronomical amount.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, we should talk about the Jazz for a moment, Craig, before I set you loose.
Yeah.
I mean, the issue is we just all know the deal. Kevin Reynolds from the Salt Lake Tribune, he's the new Jazz beat writer, is reporting that Lauri Markkanen was injured in practice today and is currently having an MRI on his hip and his knee. I believe it's his hip and his knee. But anyway, we'll wait to hear what that looks like. Obviously, we're hoping for nothing but good news for Lauri. If that's something that's compromising him long term, that would really derail so many different things. But since you and I last spoke, Yusuf Nurkic also out for the year, Jaren Jackson Jr. out for the year. And I got to say, when I was watching the other night, when Terry Eason hip-checked Vince Williams Jr., and I saw the replay, I went, oh, no. Because I don't know how many people around here know the story. I know you do, Craig, but to unpack it real quick, this kid has worked his tail off to be an NBA player, and he is. And this is a contract year for him. Like, there are so many things that suck about what happened, not just not being able to see him play, because I think the Jazz wanted him as part of that deal. He's a good player. So before I set you loose, 24 games left. What are we watching for here, Craig?
Well, with the injuries you just ran down, you're looking basically at a team that is going to be, whether they planned it or not, to see a lot of minutes from Blake Hinson, Oscar Tshiebwe, Elijah Harkless, John Conchar, Mikhailuk Sensabaugh, Ace Bailey, and Collier. I mean, that's basically, I think, who you're going to see most of. They got to protect, obviously, until Keontae had both a left and right ankle sprain just prior to the All-Star break, and his status is still kind of listed as day-to-day. I was heartbroken for Vince. I've had a chance to meet him in Orlando for the first time, and he talked about the new start, as did Conchar, as did Jaren Jackson Jr. Spence. Look, injuries are horrific, and anybody who's had an ACL, it's no fun. And it's a long journey back. It's a lonely journey, by the way, and especially when a player was so excited as Vince was. We were calling him Junior because there's so many juniors on the Jazz now. That you feel for him, because you're right. The story of him from Virginia Commonwealth, making it to the NBA, it just doesn't happen every day. And I'm just glad that he had in his mind, Spence, he had a new beginning, a new start, as did Jaren Jackson Jr. and actually Conchar as well. All three were excited to be a part of this new Jazz movement. And he was hoping he could stick, because what was he about? Defense. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to play D for Will Hardy. And now you just hope he can make a quick recovery, and it's not as damaging sometimes. Until you get inside, Spence, and check out what happened to the knee, you don't know. But man, I just groaned myself, because you knew what was going down when he fell. It was not a good fall, and you knew the leg just kind of let go. And those are heartbreaking moments, man. Heartbreaking moments.
No doubt. All right, Bowler, appreciate the time, man, and the perspective on other things than what we usually talk about. And next year, my guess is...
You are, man. You always spread it around, Spence. That's the beauty, man.
No, I appreciate that.
You go outside the norm. You go outside the box, pal.
Well, I think next year we're going to be able to talk about a lot of fun Jazz basketball every week. How about that?
I'm in. I'm all I'm all with you. Hope everybody's healthy, focused, and the Jazz can really make some noise in the West. It's time. It's time.
Yes, it is. All right, Craig, thanks for the time. Have a good call tomorrow, okay?
Thank you, pal. Good to talk to you.
I will catch a break. But coming up on the other side, he spent 40 years with the Jazz front office, and now he's our very own Richard Smith. Got to give a shout out to my friends at the Utah Royals who just dropped off a lovely Utah Royals kit for me as the Royals season about to get going. So check out all their social content at Utah Royals FC. The new kit is being referred to as the Swarm Kit, honoring the Beehive State, which, of course, is where we live here in Utah. So shout out to my friends at the Royals. Excited for their season to get going. All right, live in studio, fresh off a little spring training jaunt down in Phoenix is our guy, Richard Smith. Smitty, how are you, buddy?
Spence, we're doing great, man. It was nice down in Phoenix. It was nice 80-degree weather. We saw a bunch of spring training baseball games. We got the new baseball season started. Even got in a round of a bad golf, which is typical for me. So, we had a good time. Yeah, it was great.
This is an annual trek for you, correct?
Well, it's been annual for several years now, but it was following on, of course, coattails that I've ridden for a long, long time with Frank and Barbara Layden, who were going down to spring training for 20-plus years every spring, since Frank retired. That was one of their annual jaunts, was to spend the month of spring training in late February through March down there to go into the games. And our great friend Brett Crane used to work for the Jazz and the Bees here. Now works one of the main guys working with the Angels in their clubhouse. And he always hooked us up when we go down there. He used to give Frank and Barbara these VIP passes for the whole spring training, and they'd come in and out. I remember one time we're driving into game there at the Tempe Diablo Stadium, and a policeman stopped us and said, "Do you have a pass?" We have a pass, and Frank just leaned over, and as he always could, come up with something to spur the moment. Goes, "No, we don't need a pass. I'm the owner of the Salt Lake Bees, the AAA team." And the policeman looked at him, and he looked at me, and I kind of shrugged like. And the policeman goes, yeah, okay, good. And so it just waves us into the player parking lot, whatever. And that by the way, Spence, is one of many Frank Layden parking stories that I may put in the book someday. About ways we probably weren't where we were supposed to be, but Frank would talk his way right into the front row of wherever we were going.
So without people knowing that he was Frank Layden, just so he would come up with some sort of just story?
Well,
because I feel like most people knew who Frank was.
Yeah, well, let me give you a real brief one, and it's one of the funnier ones is we're going down to a Utah BYU football game, okay? And we're going down, and we're with Denny Dunn, who was a big-time, U-Booster, Crimson Club guy. And I'm sitting in the back, and Frank and Denny are in the front, and the two barbers, their wives, were with us, and we go down, and as we're approaching the stadium down there, Denny yells back, "Hey, Smitty, where are we parking?" I said, "Where are we parking?" "Denny, you're the big time Crimson Club guy. I thought you had a parking pass." He goes, "No, I don't have a parking pass. I thought you knew where we were parking." I said, "No, I don't know." So Frank goes, "Hey, just pull in the main lot right here, right next to the VIP gold lot, whatever it was." And we're in a line, and we get up to the front. Now the woman working, letting you in the lot, is like a co-ed. Okay, so she's like a 19, 20-year-old woman, female student, and she goes, "Yes, this is the gold lot. You need a gold sticker." No, I'm a friend of the president's. The president told me to just pull in here and park in here. And she goes, you need a pass. No, we don't have a pass. He told me just to come in here. And so now this goes on for 20 or 30 seconds, and she's insisting we have a pass. Now the line is backing up behind us because it's all the people who do have a pass.
Correct, yeah.
And they're like, "Hey, what's going on at the front? Let's go." You know? And so now some older retired gentleman guy walks over who's working the other lot and sees there's a problem, goes, "Hey, what's the problem? Hey, let's go. They don't have a pass." And he goes, "Hey, you need a pass to get it." "Oh, Coach. Hey, Coach Layden, what are you doing?" And he goes, Hey, what's going on? Hey, Coach, you have a pass?" "No, the president told me to park here." And then this guy looks at the young girl, and he looks at us, and he looks behind our car, and now sees a string of like 25 cars waiting, and he makes an executive decision. "All right, this isn't worth it." Yeah, Coach, go on in. Yeah. You're okay, right? Yeah, we got it. And then boom, go right in the front row, But that was typical. That was Frank,
Well, I mean, it had to be calculated because once there are 25 cars behind you, you can't tell all 25 of them to back up so you can get out. You kind of just got to cut your losses.
Yeah, exactly. And this guy, as soon as he recognized that it was Frank, we knew we were in.
Love it. All right, we'll get to. I want your thoughts on BYU and Utah hoops, and then of course we'll do some NBA and some Jazz because a lot of things has happened since you and I last spoke. But I always like to get your perspective on, big things that are going on that you can help us kind of have good perspective on because of all of your experience. And that's not me calling you old. That's me calling you wise. Okay.
It is, Spence. It is.
So I'll tell you what, I don't remember the last time I enjoyed sitting down and watching a game like I did Sunday morning watching the U.S. men win gold for the first time in 46 years. And I don't get up at 5:30 a.m. for anything. It's like maybe golf and apparently Olympic hockey, right?
Apparently.
And right. I mean, I was groggy like everybody else, but I was locked in, wildly entertained. And I'll never forget the moment when Jack Hughes scored the game-winning goal. And I was 2 in 1980. Yeah. Don't recall it much. But, of course, a lot of parallels to the Miracle on Ice back in 1980. But you had a chance to watch it, and you have good perspective on these things. What are some of your takeaways?
No, it was funny that you say that because, Spence, you only have to get up that early once every 4 years.
Yes.
See, so
which is
you can do that.
I can handle that. Yes, I can handle that.
The Miracle on Ice, a lot of fans always remember that in 1980 in Lake Placid. I remember it very well. I had just moved here in Salt Lake. But what I do remember was that a lot of people forget that Miracle on Ice game was a semifinal game against Russia. Russia, Soviet Union, was the big boy on the block at the time. They had won the 5 of the previous 6 gold medals in Olympic hockey, and they were the big boys, and they had circumvented the rules at the time because it was only supposed to be all amateurs, and they had a bunch of guys who they had hired to work in government jobs in Russia who were really training full time to be professional hockey players, but the U.S. beat them, but then the U.S. still had to win the final game, which is 2 days later on a Sunday against Finland. If they had not won that game, there was a scenario because at that time, Spence, the last team standing was a round robin. It wasn't just a knockout stage. Mm-hmm. So you could win or you could lose one final game. Like the U.S. was in a position on that Sunday against Finland. If they had lost that game and had lost by more than one goal, they would have been knocked off the podium altogether. They wouldn't have even won a medal. Yeah. And so that was still a lot of pressure on them, and they were still behind by Finland 2-1 after 2 periods and came back. But the Miracle on Ice game was a Friday night, and it was not broadcast live, okay? If you can believe this, ABC had made a decision. They wanted to move the game back, and they wanted to move the game into prime time in the U.S., but Russia, the Soviet Union, protested, rightly so, saying, hey, if you move the game into prime time U.S., back in Moscow, it's going to be 4 a.m, nobody in Russia will be able to watch it. So that's not fair to us. Okay, you're right. Okay, so ABC decided to do their regular programming and then air the game, which was edited when they aired it. So you didn't see the full 3 periods, okay? It was edited down to, parts that weren't that important during the course of the match, but was on tape delay. So people who were watching, there are still people, Spence, today, who think they were watching the game live when the game had already been played 3 hours earlier, but we didn't have cable television quite yet then in 80. We didn't have the internet, certainly, so nobody really knew that the game had already been played. So it was a weird dynamic back then. Even at that time, the NBA Finals were also being broadcast and on tape delay after the 10 o'clock evening news in a lot of markets. And so a lot of people, nobody watched it live, that Miracle on Ice, but people like you who are diligent this time around, 4 decades plus later, are able to get up early in the morning and watch everything and rewind it and tape it and all that kind of, back then, again, you didn't have the VCR, so if you didn't even see the tape broadcast, you didn't see that was it. You didn't see it. Yeah. So a lot of things have changed, but look, I didn't realize, and even though I'm a sports fan, that even though I knew it was Lake Placid and I knew it was 1980, that it had been almost 5 decades since the U.S. men's hockey team had won a gold medal. That is a long haul for the country that hosts the greatest hockey league in the world, the NHL, right? It's interesting. So anyway, people like you will remember that and savor that for a long, long time because they're able to watch it live and see that drama unfold and how they won it in overtime. It was a terrific ending if you're a U.S. fan for the 2-week Olympic Games.
So many parallels, too, right? We needed Connor Hellebuyck to pull a Jimmy Craig and stand on his head to give us a chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, again, in 1980, my focus was trying to not pee myself when I was sleeping. I was 2. So, that was my entire world. I remember none of this. But, the political unrest of the Cold War and the Iran hostage crisis and energy, all of the things that are intertwined into that moment, into that tournament, what comes to mind as far as the unification element of it?
Yeah, well, again, people who were alive then and as old as me remember those kind of things. It was that following summer, 1980 Summer Olympics, that the U.S. was being held in the Soviet Union. The U.S. boycotted because of all the Cold War stuff that was going on. A little bit, I wouldn't say how much, but a little bit of it leaking over from this Miracle on Ice game and the U.S. The U.S. was the youngest team in the hockey competition that year. Spence, their average age was 21 years old, and they had no pros. They were all college kids going against the big boys. And we all know how basketball changed in '92 when the U.S. finally decided, well, I guess everybody else is using pro players. It's supposed to be amateur, but everybody else is doing it, so I guess we should do it. And so they send the dream team and, end up winning all those games in that tournament by an average of 44 points a game, which, but you're trying to get everybody, you're trying to get your best players to play. And at that time in 1980, you didn't have your best players. You had a bunch of college kids doing it. And now you've got all the best in the world, and Canadians are, that's their sport, and for the U.S. to be able to get a performance like they did on Sunday was something that those guys, obviously, they'll live off that a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Spence, this is just like Kevin Millar, first baseman for the Red Sox in 2004, making the prediction.
Oh.
And now it's 20-plus years later, and he's still living off that. Got a show on MLB Network, and, But those are the things that happen when you reach that moment in time and you do something that's very unusual and captures everybody's imagination. That thing can last for a long, long time.
I want to live in a Kevin Millar-free world. I cannot stand Kevin Millar. That's the one Red Sox you could bring up to really get my goat is definitely Kevin Millar. No, you're right. And we often talk about, and I'm a sports as a reflection of real life guy. It's about moments. It's about the snapshot moments, right? That you don't see coming. And if we're honest, Canada probably should have won that game 6-2.
Hey, yeah.
So we get to overtime. I had 2 thoughts. Holy smokes, we made it to overtime, and we have no chance. Because 3-on-3, and there's been a big debate about it, it actually is perfect for the speed and skill of the Canadians. We needed a little bit of luck just for Jack to have a look at goal. Because I'll tell you, just for me, overtime starts, Canada wins the faceoff, and they have this kind of set play where they want McDavid to get it with a full speed, a full head of speed. And that dude, I've seen very few people skate like he can.
Yeah.
So they execute the play. He gets the puck. I'm like, he's going to go score. We're screwed. But it really is just about these individual moments, and you never know how they're going to line up. Because, again, Canada, the better team, but the U.S. has the golden moment, which is what it's all about.
And the cross pass to Jack Hughes, and then he flicks the wrist, and the Canadian goalie gets the pads down, and that puck skimmers right in the wickets, as they call it. There was probably 5 inches to spare in there, and somehow that puck found that little hole between his pads and skirted through. And are you lucky? Okay, hey, guys may take those kind of shots on, but Canada had 41 shots on goal. Yeah. And you just have to be in the right place at the right time, and those are all cliches, but they're really true. When a moment comes and you have an opportunity, you can grab it like that. Then that not only obviously you have success at that moment, but it's something that, like for a Jack Hughes, he'll be living off that like Kevin Millar for a long, long time.
For sure.
No matter what his career does.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. I mean, these guys are legends no matter what. And there are a lot of parallels. Like there's political unrest going on right now. A lot of people not thrilled with what's going on in both the country and the world. And, it just, when you have moments like this, where hopefully no matter, where you're at in the political aisle or what you believe in, you can just appreciate, what these kids did for the country. I just find it interesting comparing this moment to that moment in 1980. Now, certainly some false, equivalencies and parallels because the things that are going on now are different than the things that were going on then. But it just, I think for at least a moment in time, the hope is, until it was politicized because everything is now, we could just be proud of these kids that just did it for the USA. At least that was how I kind of digested it on Sunday.
Yeah, what's interesting too, Spence, is different eras. And so back then, 1980, Miracle on Ice, if you didn't see it on that tape delay broadcast, you didn't see it because you didn't have a VCR, so you didn't, or DVR, or a way to go online and just pull it up and watch it. After 2 days later, when everybody's talking about it, I guess I'll sit down at home while I'm eating dinner and pull that up online and watch it, see what everybody's talking about. You couldn't do that. So you either saw it that Friday night on the ABC delay broadcast, or you didn't see it. So you just heard it from your neighbor or your friend or the guy in the office on Monday, what actually happened, what went on, and all that kind of thing. Now, today, everybody saw it. If you didn't see it live, you woke up at 10 o'clock or whatever on a Sunday, rolled over and hit the button on your remote and watched it then, and everybody was able to consume it in a much different fashion.
So a lot of, whenever something like this happens, and I always use soccer as a little bit of a parallel because we're about to have the World Cup in our region. And the World Cup is the biggest sporting event in the world. And honestly, it's not even close. The Olympics don't come close. The Super Bowl, not even. It's hard to even fathom how big the World Cup is on a worldwide scale.
Right.
How much of it moves the needle here domestically is a different conversation, but we are a small portion of a large globe, okay? So when the U.S. had the World Cup here in 94, it literally led to the creation of Major League Soccer. I mean, there's a direct line between the World Cup here and then MLS being created because a few very smart, very rich people saw that, okay, people are interested in this sport enough that we can build a league and kind of build it brick by brick. Now, the progress continues, and it has been a little bit of a slow burn, but the Gallup poll that was taken last year indicates that for the first time, soccer is now the third most popular sport in America. Football is 1, basketball is 2, soccer just passed baseball is 3, baseball is 4, hockey is 5. So a lot of people talking about how, the Miracle on Ice in 1980 motivated a generation. And none of these kids were alive, but maybe their parents were that wanted them to play hockey or what have you. We'll see what this does for the sport. But before we break, you brought up the 92 Dream Team. And I've never asked you your perspective on how exactly that changed the global game of basketball, and are we still seeing the ramifications or the fruits or whatever you want to say from that 92 experience?
Well, and if people were paying attention back then, Spence, you're talking about almost 35 years ago, but that was 45. What's my math? 92.
92.
Right?
Yeah, you're close, John.
When the Dream Team went to Barcelona, that's where the Summer Olympics were that year. They were heralded as the second coming of whatever in the sports world over there in Europe. Everybody wanted to see the Dream Team. This had never been done before. All the guys with the big ticket guys from the NBA were on the team. They didn't stay in the Olympic Village. They couldn't because there was so much scrutiny, so much media attention on them. They stayed in a mid city, a Barcelona hotel, major security around it. The bus coming in and out, couldn't get to the bus from the hotel lobby, all that kind of stuff. Everybody wanted to see them. They were the Rolling Stones. They were the Beatles on tour, and every game they blew out the competition. Averaged 44 point victories every game they played. They acted like it. They were the big boys on the block, and everybody in the world, and especially in Europe, saw that and goes, oh, I want to do like that because I want to have that kind of attention on me, when I get to be a big guy, right? So what happens now? We fast forward. What is this generation in the NBA? Spence, the MVPs. Let me list them to you the last several years: Giannis, Jokic, Doncic to come at some point, right? These guys, leading all of these European players who are coming from different countries, different backgrounds. Spain has always had a big basketball background, but all those Spanish players in the generation is just aging out now with the Gasol brothers and Rodriguez and Ricky Rubio and all those guys, top-level NBA talents. They all saw the dream team and thought, hey, I want to do something like that. That's the kind of impact that the U.S. men's hockey team could have on the sport of hockey in the U.S. because people will see, look at that response they're getting. Look how everybody's excited for them and what they did. Maybe I'm a little kid. I was playing soccer. I was playing basketball. Maybe I should try hockey, and maybe I'll like hockey as a different avenue for me as a youngster. And if that happens, then you could see the next wave, that could potentially be coming of all these American players growing up wanting to now play hockey. Because as we know, in our lifetime, or at least in my lifetime, you grew up in it. I think back east in Connecticut, lacrosse was a big sport, and it wasn't a big sport when I was growing up.
Yeah,
and that's it could be something where a lot of kids gravitate to the next sport that maybe a lot of kids aren't playing, and that maybe they find is fun for them, and it could be ice hockey.
Yeah, only time will tell. It's kind of fascinating to talk about the impact and ramifications of things that happened decades ago, where we're at now, and what this could mean for a sport that a lot of people love. So, all right, coming up next, rough night last night for both Utah and BYU basketball. We're going to talk about that with Smitty. The debate about who the number one pick should be. A.J. DeBonsa is now your favorite in Vegas. We'll update you on the Lauri Markkanen story in case you missed it. Kevin Reynolds from the Salt Lake Tribune, the new beat writer for the Jazz, reported that Lauri was hurt in practice today, and he's having an MRI on his hip and his ankle. So we'll keep you up to date there. But I do want to tell you about my friends at Advanced Window Products. Shout out to my guy, Nate Orchard, Jake Weber. You guys know Nate, mayor of Sac Lake City, Utah Athletics Hall of Famer, former NFL football player. Winter special right now, $2,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. $2,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. Okay, so our friends at Advanced Window Products are hooking you up. Give them a call at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100, or just visit advancedwindows.com. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Excuse me. The odds for NBA MVP have fluctuated quite a bit because of the 65-game rule compromising the award. SGA, Shea is still your favorite, but I think if he misses 4 or 5 more games, he's out. Jokic, like 2 or 3. Wembanyama, 6 or 7. So now we're hearing things like Cade Cunningham, Donovan Mitchell. Richard Smith is live in studio. Just a quick thought on, look, best laid plans. Yeah, you know why the league did it, but do you think we need to reconsider?
Yeah, see, Spence, some of that stuff, it ends up being reactionary type decisions that sometimes are made, and then they come back to bite you. You know, nobody would dispute any of those guys you just mentioned who might miss that so-called cutoff are playing at MVP levels. Sometimes you have to, let those things just play themselves out and make decisions based on common sense, which sometimes we don't use a lot. And that's going to be a thing where they have to look at that again, right? And especially if it ends up being the way it is, and some of those guys play 63 or 64, but they're obviously were playing better than anybody else, and so now you're saying, well, they didn't play enough games, so we're going to give it to a second-tier guy or something in that regard. Just doesn't feel right.
No, I tend to agree with you. We'll get back to some NBA stuff, but I wanted to get your perspective, and we'll start with the Utes. We'll start with Utah basketball. Obviously, Al. You worked with Al for a long time. You've been up to some practices. And, I've talked about this all year based off the fact that it was a total rebuild and reload where Kiana Dawes is the only significant piece from a year ago to come back. And Alex, really working to implement a system and doing the best he can to coach these kids up. From my vantage point, and last night included, of course, Iowa State's really good. I don't know that there's been a league game all year where I feel like Al has had even close to the talent the other coaches had. That's just my personal opinion. So whether it's a booster, a donor, or somebody out there that has some cash, hopefully Al gets some support at some point, because that's the deal now. You got to have talent. 2-13 in league. They're 10-18 overall. But since you and I last spoke, they went on the road and beat a pretty good West Virginia team, and their defense over the past 6 games has been much improved. The game last night went about how I thought it was going to go because Iowa State's that good. I think I've seen some improvement. I'm not a moral victory guy, but I don't think Alex is either. Just tell me what you've seen.
Yeah, I think they have gotten better, Spencer. They don't have the talent. They got in late. Alex is hiring, and then he made the decision. The agreement was that he would finish out the NBA season last year with the Dallas Mavericks. They did that, so putting their group together came late in the recruiting cycle. They had a hard time getting any kind of players they would normally try and go after, and so they ended up getting a bunch of guys who are willing to come and play at Utah this year. I think the majority of them, my opinion, I don't know this, seem to be guys who are just passing through and probably won't be here next year. Maybe a few guys will hold over, but he's got to improve that talent base and that talent level. And now that they've had a full recruiting cycle this past year to get through, and I know they've been overseas in Europe talking to a few players over there and trying to get in on some guys. They'll be better. I think they've played better the games I've watched and that I've attended over the last 4 to 6 weeks. Maybe the results haven't been there, but they've played a little bit better, more connected defensively. They don't have quite the talent offensively. They've got the 2 guys who do all the scoring. They're limited in how they do that. So when defenses, gear up on them, which they always do, then it makes it tough for the rest of the team to respond. But you can tell they're getting better. They're getting used to how Alex and his staff are coaching them, and with more talent and upgrade in that area next year, I would assume that they would just start, climbing the ladder in the Big 12 to be more competitive in the next couple of years.
Jonathan Gavoni from Draft Express reported on February 15th that an Austrian big man named Finn Schott has committed to Utah. His agent, I'm not going to try to pronounce the agent's name, told Gavoni that Finn Schott is committed to Utah. 6'10", 19 years old. He's been what's characterized as a dominant force on the FIBA youth circuit and was a standout this summer with Austria's senior team alongside Jakob Poeltl. I had never heard of him. When I saw the report, I watched some YouTube highlights. That's the extent of it. But you're a guy that has spent time scouting international players throughout the course of your career. So when you hear things like dominant force on the FIBA youth circuit and stand out during the summer with Austria's senior team, what sort of context can you provide about things like what sort of competition this young man's played against?
Well, they're going to go after guys that they've identified early. One of the things Alex did was setting up his coaching staff to try and cover all of the recruiting bases and also get guys who are well versed in the X's and O's in basketball. So Rafael Chilius is on the staff, is well connected in the U.S. with the high school, the AAU scene. He knows everybody. He's a veteran coach and veteran in the grassroots level of basketball. So he's going to be able to talk to a lot of the American kids that they may want to be going after. Martin Schiller, who is also on the staff, is coached over in Europe. He's from Germany. He came over and coached the Jazz's G League team for several years, and then went back to Europe, and at one point was coaching in the Euro League at the highest level. In Lithuania, he knows everybody in throughout Europe, so he has connections in European basketball. And then you have Eric Daniels, who is also on the staff, who is coached in several of the schools here in the state, and is the son of Donnie Daniels, and is well connected throughout the state and throughout the Intermountain region in terms of high school recruiting. So they've got a lot of those bases covered. So over in Europe, they're going to be able to identify through Martin Schiller who the guys are that they like, who are the guys that would fit in with how they want to coach, and then what guys can they reasonably get in on that might want to come over and play for their group, knowing that they're going to come into a program where if they commit, like this player who's going to come in next year, he's going to get a chance to play a lot of minutes early because they need guys to play a lot of minutes. So guys like that are going to see that as an opportunity to come over and show what they can do. What's interesting in the college landscape now, Spence, is that those kind of players in the past, even going back to when Luka Doncic was in Madrid a decade ago, those guys, if they were identified to be good enough, they normally would graduate to the senior team of the club that they were affiliated with. So they would stay there and maybe be paid $75,000, maybe $100,000 as a 19-year-old, as a 20-year-old, and probably sit on the end of the bench and have to work their way up, both talent-wise and in the hierarchy of that club, to get any kind of playing time. Now that same kid in Europe, whether it's in Germany or in Greece or in Serbia, wherever it is, he looks at it and he says, well, I can go to the senior team of the club that I play for now coming out of the high school level, or I can go over to the U.S., play for a team, say, for example, like Utah in a big-time conference, a team that needs players. I'm going to go. They're going to pay me whatever the number is, Spence. I'm making up $300,000, $400,000, whatever, to come over, go to Utah, be in their system, and also play major minutes in front of all the NBA guys who will be watching every game. Mm-hmm. So that is a big deal in recruiting now. And so a lot of the kids who would have stayed in Europe for a year or two, and then you were trying to draft them, which was one of my jobs for a while with the Jazz, identifying those guys and running all over Europe. Now, maybe there were, at that time, legitimately 10, 12, 15 guys that you were following that might be in the upcoming NBA draft. Now maybe 10 of those 15 guys, or maybe 12 of those 15 guys, are now at a U.S. college or university playing Division I. So they're right here in your backyard. You don't have to go over to Europe. And so what we're seeing is that those guys migrating to the U.S. for the NCAA NIL opportunities, but also getting under the eyes of NBA scouts. And what is the trickle down to that, Spence, is you're seeing also at the current time NBA staffs cutting back on their international scouting because the guys they would have been running around the world chasing are now at Kansas or at UCLA or in Illinois or what have you. So hopefully Utah can get in on a few of those guys starting next year.
While we're in this space, it just jarred something in my mind. ESPN has up right now a documentary called Origin, the Basketball Africa League. Joakim Noah is involved as one of the investors. Steph Curry is in the doc. Former President Barack Obama is in the doc. Masai Ujiri made a comment on this documentary where he said at any time there's 100 LeBron James walking around Africa. Of course, he means people that are built and look like LeBron. Yeah. I don't know a ton. I mean, look, Olajuwon, right? But there are some NBA players that have been awesome that have their origins in Africa. I will admit to being a little bit ignorant with this potential pipeline of talent. Can you illuminate us a little bit on maybe this ecosystem?
Yeah, so over a decade ago, Spence, the NBA, we're trying to expand overseas, trying to get worldwide. As they were, a lot of it was spurred on by Yao Ming coming to the NBA from China. And so the NBA created NBA academies around the world to try and identify and train young prospects that they thought might get to eventually an NBA level. So they opened up at the time 7 academies around the world to try and attract local talent, to try and identify and groom and educate and train and all that kind of stuff. They opened up an academy in Latin America, down in Mexico, to service the Central America and South American areas. They opened up an academy in India. They opened up one in Africa. They opened up one in Australia. And then they opened up 3 in China, because the prevailing feeling at the time was all of the demographics, and I don't know if this was accurate or not, but I remember because I was at the forefront of that, working for the Jazz at the time. But they had identified the notion that in the next generation there were going to be 3 million Chinese people, men, who are going to grow to at least 7 feet tall. That was the prevailing, however that science or whatever they had going at the time. And they thought if we get in the ground floor and we get some of these kids who are 8, 10, 12 years old and start grooming them, maybe we'll find another Yao Ming or 2 or 3. What's happened in China is it hasn't worked because the Chinese government gets involved and they don't get along with the American training, or that's a whole nother thing to explore sometime. But as a result, they've closed down all the academies in China.
All 3 of them?
After a decade.
Oh.
Yeah, they consolidated the 3 into 1.
Okay.
And now they're in the process of eliminating the last one, because they basically said, we tried that experiment, didn't work. Okay, let's get on to the next thing. They're shutting down the one in Central America. They've consolidated the one in Australia. They're shutting down the one in India, but they are putting additional resources into the ones in Africa.
So that's where the talent is.
So that's where the talent is.
Okay.
And if you go, and we would have spent several seasons, several summers, we would have an NBA Academy tournament, and we would get the NBA would bring all of those groups together in Atlanta and have a week-long camp, a training camp. Coaches come in, do some clinics, all that stuff, and then those different academies would play against each other. And you could visibly see on the floor in one gym the kids from South America, the kids from China, the kids from Africa, the kids from India, and how they played the game just naturally, what their particular instincts were, right? Mm-hmm. And the kids from South America, the kids from Australia, they kind of had a better idea of the game. The kids from China were very robotic. They followed just the script, and there wasn't much athleticism reaction to the kind of game they played. The kids from Africa maybe didn't know what they were doing, but they were running up and down the floor by everybody, throwing the ball 10 feet over the gym and hitting the wall and whatever, but they were jumping over the rim and they were running by everybody, and their athleticism and their ability, the size and their length, you could see where, okay, if you get enough guys, enough kids, and you train them and they come through your system, you'll be able to find some guys, as the analogy we've used before, Spence, is like mining for gold in the river. You get enough of them in that pan, and you shake the pan out, and you're going to find, 3 or 4 or 5 gold nuggets that are going to come through, and then you're going to have some guys, whether it's Embiid or whether it's Luol Deng or whether it's whoever the names are that I'm escaping me from the moment, who have come through Africa at the beginning part of this NBA Academy experience, and now they've heightened that just before COVID, and then COVID whacked it for a few years. But the NBA is heavily involved in the Basketball Africa League to try and establish a pro league in Africa where they can groom guys and study guys and track them, and hopefully find some gold nuggets along the way that would be good enough to come over, play both in the U.S. College level, and then perhaps eventually at the professional level in the NBA.
I'm chuckling a little bit. Do you remember the movie Airplane?
Of course.
You remember the scene where Stryker stumbles upon the Malumbo tribe?
Yes, yes.
He's like, I'm going to teach him how to play basketball. He shoots a shot and misses, and then suddenly they're dunking on him, and I don't know. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just kind of an interesting thing that I wasn't fully familiar with. But before we run out of time, we talked Utah basketball, and I'll just say for myself, this year has gone about how I thought it would go. Now, for BYU, it has been much different than I expected. I picked them to be a top 3 team in the league and maybe potentially go to an Elite 8. Now, it's not just Richie Saunders; it's Dawson Baker. They have had some bad luck with injuries. But last night, I'm finishing Knicks Cavs. I'm watching Utah, watching some other games, and I flip over to BYU UCF, and they're down like 16-4. Yeah. I'm going like, what happened? And then, one of their issues this year is getting off to slow starts, and then they usually get themselves back into the game, sometimes come back and win. They're down 24 at half. I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. UCF comes out in the second half and scores the first 10, and at one point they were up 36, and by the time BYU woke up, it was way too late. And honestly, AJ didn't play that well. Like, if you look at the box score, he had 29, but 12 of them were in the last 3 minutes when they were already cooked. So I just want your thoughts. I'm very surprised that we're sitting here and this team is trending towards maybe an 8 or a 9 seed, and if they win more than one game in the tournament, I think folks might be surprised.
Yeah, well, they got off to a rough start beginning of the year, Spencer. There was a lot of hope for them, but they had 2 major injuries, to guys who they expected to be in their rotation and be contributors who haven't played at all this year. And then you got the Richie Saunders injury with his ACL last month. Those things can hurt you. And then we always would say in the basketball world, Spence, when you're looking for players at the NBA level, you're looking for free agents, you're looking for guys to draft, what have you. You can never have enough shooting, because shooting will kill you every time. And Central Florida just had one of those games where they came out and boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, they're draining shots from all over. And what happens, Spence, you start doing that, especially on the road, and you quiet a crowd like that, your confidence level goes up 2 or 3 notches very quickly, and the balls start flying even more freely. And you see a few more go in, and all of a sudden, you're rolling. And that's what happened last night.
Yeah.
And that is not unusual if a team – sneaks up on another team, and it's not that you're not prepared, and it's not that your guys aren't ready, but the other team has the guys who let go, and they make 6 of the first 8 shots, from long range, and all of a sudden they got it, they're feeling it, and they're going, and the confidence gets up, and BYU kind of got slapped in the head side of the head a little bit in that regard. And, maybe they were shocked that was happening to them, and they just never recovered. And every team has games like that every now and then that come up against them. I don't think it's anything room for panic for BYU. They just have to keep towing the line of what they've got with the guys they've got. They're a little dinged up. Okay, that's the way it goes. The teams are going to load up on Debansa and make the right kid make more plays off the dribble and make the Kostic kid make some shots like he was able to do last night. But he's going to have to do some more of that when they get into their conference tournament. And then the NCAA tournament, that's always the luck of the draw to see where they would be placed and then who they're playing up against. And then you go at it and see what you got. But there's no doubt that they're a little dizzy today after that sonic boom that hit them last night.
Yeah, and look, UCF's not a bad basketball team. We should be clear. They were without Riley Kugel, who I think is their leading scorer. But it was one of those nights where and look, also, in order to be honest about this dynamic, like, yes, it was excellent shot making, but even the guys on the broadcast were like, BYU looks so confused on defense. A lot of just wide open threes, like practice threes. And if you let good college basketball players get confidence by knocking down some open shots, it's oftentimes things like that can get loose. So UCF, as a result of that win, is now firmly in the NCAA tournament. But what's your expectation? What's the recalibrated BYU expectation the rest of the way, both to finish off the regular season, Big 12 tournament style, and then on to the NCAAs? Because, of course, they're going to be in the tournament, but we thought they'd be like a top 3 or 4 seed, and that's not happening.
Yeah, well, they're again, Spence, it's going to depend on the matchups they get. We already know that they're going to be in one side of the bracket because they're not they're not allowed to play Sunday games, so they have to be in the brackets, the 2 brackets that play Thursday, Saturday games. And who else is assigned to those brackets? We just wait and see how that shakes out. Look, they're going to have time to prepare. Kevin Young and his staff is very good at doing that. They know how to do that stuff. They're just going to have to get prepared with the guys they have. The guys are going to have to step up. There's going to have to be a couple guys like Kada, who's going to have to be a man in NCAA tournament games and be a guy who gets 10, 12 rebounds and protects the rim as much as he can, even though he's a shorter inside guy. He has a bounce and a spring to him. He's going to have to show up defensively, and there's going to be a lot of weight on Debance's shoulders and on Wright's shoulders to be able to come through. But Wright, being a ball handler and being a guy who's been through it before, he has that experience. Debance has the talent to be able to rise above most guys he's going to be playing on a particular night. And they're going to have to get some help from some of the guys that maybe don't produce as much during regular season games. When you get to the tournament, it's one and done, and those guys are going to be feeling that pressure, and they're going to know they're a little shorthanded, but that's what you got. So you just got to roll with it, and you see what you have. I don't think, back in November they had a few great wins. Everybody's saying, "Oh, this is a Final Four team." Maybe it was when they had healthy guys. Maybe they're a little dinged up now. Maybe that's not the case. But March is also a new season, and we see what they're able to do when they can recover. Going into the conference tournament, Big 12 in Kansas City, and then and see what happens after that.
All right, 24 games left for the Jazz. If you missed it, Kevin Reynolds from the Salt Lake Tribune, the new Jazz beat writer from the Trib, reported that Lauri Markkanen was injured in practice today. He's having an MRI on his hip and his ankle. So we'll hope for great things with Lauri. Ultimately, I felt like they were going to find a way to shut him down anyway. I'm not making light of what could be a serious injury. I will never do that. So hopefully he's okay. Yusuf Nurkic, some nose surgery, out for the year. Yep. Jaren Jackson Jr., out for the year. Really bummed out for Vince Williams Jr. for the torn ACL contract year for a kid who's worked his tail off to be an NBA player. Just a quick thought on the final 24. I don't know. Like, we know they're not trying to win. We know they're unserious. Is there anything worth watching?
Well, again, Spence, it's going to be interesting. They're going to play a lot of young guys. But what's going to be fascinating is we all know about the top 8 protected pick. We know the Jazz are sitting at 6 right now. The lottery odds, will work in their favor if they lose enough games and end up in the bottom 4 of the league standings. Then we know that they would be able to secure that top 8 protected pick. But if they don't, if they end up 6 or even they end up 7, 8 in the final standings, then it's all going to depend on how the draft lottery goes on May 10th and how the percentages work for them or against them. And that's going to be a big deal. And how they handle these minutes of the players going into these games is going to be interesting, because there's going to be nights where they're going to have a good chance to win games, and maybe the ownership, the management doesn't want them to win the game, but the young guys are out there. They're fighting for their jobs, Spence. They're trying to get better. They're trying to prove that they're NBA level guys, whether it's for the Jazz or for some other organization. So they're trying to do their best out there night in, night out. And I wouldn't want to be in that locker room every night, this next month and a half, because there's going to be a lot of, I think, whether they're spoken, probably mostly unspoken, conflicts of interest about, what am I doing and what's my role here in the game tonight, and what do they expect me to do. That's a tough road to hoe when everybody knows what it is they're setting themselves up to do. That's going to be very, very interesting to see how it plays out.
Last thing, we'll set you loose on this. Over the past 48 hours, A.J. DeBonsa has surpassed Darren Peterson as the Vegas favorite to be the number 1 overall pick. Now, we've talked about Darren's lack of availability, pulling himself out of games at times, not being available due to injuries or wanting to be on ice for the NBA. Who knows exactly what's going on? Say what you want about AJ. The kid shows up, plays his ass off, and he has given everything that he has to BYU basketball this year. So there's that. But if the Jazz get the number 1 overall pick, what do you think? Who do you think we see and why?
Well, hey, they're going to have to figure out, who makes the most sense to them. The Peterson kid could be a generational player. He's very good when he's right and he's on the floor. He's really tough. DeBansa is showing that he's a real guy. And then I'm a big Cam Boozer fan. I'm biased, okay? Carlos's son, and but he's a real player as well. He can shoot outside. He can play inside. So it's going to be, we all like ice cream, Spence, but some people like vanilla, some people like chocolate. It just depends what flavor you like, but they're all going to be good talents, I think, in the NBA. And if the Jazz are fortunate enough to have the opportunity to get one of them, then that's going to be a big boost to the group that they would presume to have coming back for next year.
You're not going to give me a name, are you?
No, I don't know. I mean,
who would you pick if I asked you who you would pick?
If all the medical stuff worked out,
everything's all
whatever,
equal. Yeah.
It would be, I'd probably go with the Peterson kid.
Yeah.
But I like DeBansa a lot.
For sure.
I like him a lot because he's a down to earth guy too, and I think he's a worker. His parents have raised him right, and I know more about him than I do about the Peterson kid in terms of off the floor and how he would fit in with the group. So
we'll see. Wrong. Yeah, we'll see. It would be fun if the Jazz get a little luck that way. Hey, before I set you loose, we got 2 events.
Yeah.
Please illuminate us what's going on this weekend.
Yeah, can I just tell our listeners real quick?
Absolutely.
On Saturday, this Saturday at the Masonic Temple from 1 to 3 in the afternoon, there's going to be an open house to celebrate the life of John Absey, who was the original Jazz Bear, who unfortunately passed away last month after a year-long battle from pancreatic cancer. That's going to be Saturday, February 28th from 1 to 3 over here at the Masonic Temple on South Temple. People can look that up and get the information on that. But it's an open house. Please invite your friends, come by, say hello, and honor the Jazz Bear with his family and friends there at that event. And then on Sunday at Niagara University back in Buffalo, New York, the university is honoring Frank and Barbara Layden with a Lifetime Legacy event that they're doing all weekend on the campus. And they'll be doing a halftime ceremony at the basketball game Sunday afternoon against Merrimack there on the Niagara campus. But people who might want to see something like that or remember Frank and Barbara one last time, They'll be showing a nice video honoring them, and you can go online at Niagara University at their website and see that and take part in that if you want to do so. But two great jazz people and jazz legends, and being honored this coming weekend. And both you and I, Spence, were fortunate enough to know both of them and call them our friends. And Barbara Layden, was everybody's sweetheart, and so we're excited to be able to honor those people coming up this weekend.
Good stuff, Smitty. Thanks for mentioning that. Appreciate your time. Okay, be good. Travel safe, and we'll get you back
Thanks,
next
Spence.
week. All right, Richard Smith, 40 years with the Jazz front office. Coming up next, why didn't Luka shoot the ball last night? He was wide open. Dave McMenamin joins us from ESPN. Gavin Peterson, the head coach of the Utah women's team, will join us later as well. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Wednesday Drive. Keep it here on ESPN 700. All right, Jazz are off tonight. They're taking on the Pelicans tomorrow. So NBA basketball, it's fantastic. I don't think the Pelicans are trying to lose. I just don't think they're very good. But some good games tonight. We'll get to some NBA storylines now with our buddy Dave McMenamin from ESPN on a Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, Dave. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I've been the Pelicans. I think they're like 4-6 over the last 10. So I'd say they're on a heater.
Well, compared to what it's been prior to 4-6 and their last 10 certainly is on fire. I do want to ask you this, though, and if you don't have anything on it, we can move on. Our local Salt Lake Tribune Jazz beat writers reported that Lauri Markkanen injured today in practice, and he's having an MRI on his hip and his ankle. Do you have any insight here on what's going on?
I'm aware of the report, and yeah, I don't know the circumstances of what would have occurred at practice, and I'll leave it at that. I mean, obviously there is the eyebrow raise just to a slight degree, and we're seeing how guys are coming up injured in Utah, and the league's response to guys playing or not playing thus far, being pretty skeptical. And so I'm not saying that there is anything nefarious going on, but it does make you wonder when you see that Nurkic is going out with a nose procedure, which is kind of unheard of before, to have it done this time of the season. And then we hear about something happening at practice with their best player. I guess we're going to have to find out more information.
Well said. And yes, I mean, obviously, when it comes to injuries, you've got to be really careful. So I'll be very clear that I very much hope this is nothing serious, because in the case that it is, it changes a lot. He's still the best player on this team by far. But ultimately, whether it's Jaren Jackson Jr. and his knee surgery, Yusuf Nurkic and the nasal whatever, and now potentially Lauri, isn't this maybe the Jazz just learning a lesson? Like, hey, if we're going to tank, we just have to do it the way everybody else is doing it instead of playing good players and then holding them out in the fourth quarter?
Well, I do think that in general, like, first of all, let's start with the idea that I feel like the anti-tanking stance from the NBA has a lot of holes that can be poked in it. I think Rick Carlisle made a very clear statement when he shared the other day where we have a player who's, I think it was Andrew Nemhard he referred to, that is dealing with an illness or an injury. And the league's response was, well, why aren't you medicating that player in order to be able to play? And we're 30 games under 500. Who are they to step in and suggest that's the proper kind of take over the overall situation to implement in that moment? Now, if a player has medical proof of a procedure, I don't think the league is allowed to do anything. And so, to me, and I'm not suggesting that Nurkic's situation, I think Chris Haynes reported that it was a breathing situation, so that is very serious, especially for a big man. And Jaren Jackson Jr. dealing with the knee as well. I'm not suggesting they aren't real things, but they are decisions that were made. And the league is saying, we're not going to allow you to make the decision when it comes to minutes. That is going to be a violation. And right now, it appears that the league doesn't have any ground to stand on if the decision is made involving a medical procedure. And so whether it's a workaround or whatever, clearly the Utah Jazz has their eyes set on June 21st, or whatever it is, the NBA draft.
Chris Haynes seems to be breaking a lot of Jazz news as of late, doesn't he?
Chris Haynes does a great job.
Okay. All right. We'll leave that there. I mean, look, it's a really difficult thing to kind of delve into, because you can never be the guy that, and teams have enough of a shield and a smoke screen to say, wait, are you calling our team doctor a liar? Are you saying he's not hurt? Because you can't say that out loud in the case that something like this is actually real and it could adversely affect a career and could adversely affect a team. But it's also very clear that, historically speaking, medical reports have been manipulated, or procedures that could very well wait till the offseason are executed now. So they are sitting out. And, if the Jazz were about to win 60 games and compete for a championship, my guess is Jaren Jackson Jr.'s knee could wait. Nurk's nose might be okay. And we'll wait to hear the official word on Lauri. But to underscore kind of what you brought up concerning the Carlisle stuff, and I can't imagine Rick is going to lie about this, like, if you are the league and you are really, because I believe, Dave, and I talked to you about this, like I believe the Jazz deserve to get punished. I think I'm the only local media member that's had the courage to say that. But I also think the league, in just kind of inching closer and closer to a space of telling coaches when they should be playing their players, is very dangerous. And I think it's a little bit tricky if the league's going to try to get involved with the medical stuff as well, right? I mean, there's got to be a conflict of interest there. I don't know how you figure it out, but it just seems a little weird.
Oh, I completely agree there. I don't think the league has any place to do that. And again, that's why I think Carlisle's statement resonated so well over the last 48 hours or so since he made that statement. Like, that is showing that we are pushing back as a team. There has to be a line here, and that's a violation of how we operate. Now, again, I think, and I agree with you, like, I think we were both on the same page that some sort of punishment was warranted, but you can't have selective punishment. And there was 2 teams that were selected, and we can look at what's happening in Chicago right now. We can look at what's happening in Washington, just to name 2 teams right off the bat that I think there needs to be some clear attention being paid there, or you're going to further disenfranchise the teams that were called out. And listen, I think I'm not going to empathize or sympathize with a league, but I do think we've seen these situations with, say, the NCAA in the pre-NIL era, and one team gets dinged for recruiting violations, and hey, we know there's other teams in that conference doing the same thing. I just don't know what you do. And so either you turn a blind eye to it, or you are more strict about it. And I think right now it's a half measure by the league.
So since you and I last spoke, there was a report that Adam Silver, is looking to enact some anti-taking rules for next season. Nothing this year. It's too late at this point. So instead of going, because we've talked about the story that Shams broke and it's up on .com. So instead of rehashing that and talking about what we've already discussed, of all the things that were in that report and all the things that are potentially in play, what do you view as the most pragmatic, realistic landing spot for the league next year?
The one that I think makes a lot of sense, because it gets to the root of trying to stop teams from using tanking as a strategy, rather than having it be something that you get kind of as a silver lining to a really bad season, like what Indiana's going through, is you can't get a top 4 pick in consecutive drafts. And I think that will be one measure that will discourage a team from living in that for 3 or 4 years, or whatever it may be, or the case may be, to be their main strategy to turn their team around. I don't think that was ever the spirit of the NBA draft, and having the worst teams get the best picks. It was, okay, now, here's a little bit of government assistance, if you will, and let's get back up and working here. And I think that's the most practical change. I think there will be more than that, but I see no problem at all with that. And you could say, okay, well, what about the team that they have 2 straight bad years full of bad luck? Well, okay, then the second year you can only get the 5th pick or later. I think that's a fair compromise.
All right, one more thing kind of relating to this. I'm not going to ask any more questions about the Jazz unless you want to talk about Bryce Sensabaugh's, dribble, pull-up, jump shot. But I just wondered, and look, I know that you guys oftentimes, I do the same thing. One of the cool things about our business now is there are people that exclusively cover the draft and exclusively scout players. So instead of, trying to pretend like I'm watching all of these games every single night, I tend to listen to what the experts have to say and kind of follow the trends and try to have my own opinion about it. And we have A.J. DeBonce in our backyard. And, of course, Darren Peterson plays in the Big 12 just like Utah and BYU does. We're very much hoping that this trouble is worth something. All the chaos and the unseriousness about competing and being very blatant that you don't give a rip about the integrity of games, which I believe that they've done, at least leads to something tangible, namely the number 1 overall pick. Just give me the buzz. Like, what are you hearing as far as whether DeBonsa should be the guy or Peterson should be the guy, or maybe even a Boozer take as well? Just what are you hearing around the league?
I feel like the scouts I've spoken to dating back before the college season began, and there's a couple guys that are at Crypto.com arena a lot, and they're kind of the guys I usually check in on what I think my Syracuse program is doing, and then the other guys at the top of the league. And DeBansa remains the guy that they are, just completely in awe of, and especially you consider, look at Boozer. Duke is stacked, and Kansas relatively stacked. BYU, every time they go into any arena, it's the entire team looking to stop one guy, and he's averaging 26, 7, and 7 with good efficiency and making the type of plays that jump off the screen, and you're like, yeah, I can't wait to see him in the NBA. And then, like, you think about that part of it too. Basketball is supposed to be entertaining. You're supposed to be able to put together an exciting product. DeBansa is that. And, I'm not saying Peterson is not an exciting player. He certainly is. But he doesn't have the size that DeBansa has. And then he has, whether this baggage will stick or will it be something that actually has any kind of further implication about how he will treat being a professional basketball player, I don't know. But right now, there's static with him as to how he is managing his role with the Kansas Jayhawks, and people wondering if that is a character issue, that is speaks to his competitive spirit, maybe says something about how he will handle his business when he's supposed to be part of a team and organization structure at the next level. Those are question marks. I'm not saying that those question marks are only occurring because maybe he's ahead of the curve as an NIL athlete and recognizing that if you want to structure it this way, because there is a report unverified that Stephen A. Smith said on First Take, so I'll say where I heard it, that perhaps the way he's approaching some of his minutes is that, hey, I haven't been given the NIL as promised, so you're not going to get the full Darren Peterson till I get the full contract, basically. And if that is the case, maybe he's ahead of his time and using leverage in the proper way. But at the end of the day, we don't like to see business bleed into what's on the 94 by 50. Off the court, sure, we recognize there's going to be situations like holdouts and what's all those things. But much the same way that I think tanking became such an issue for the league when they started seeing substitution patterns and minutes being manipulated in order to win or lose games, I think the same thing we're seeing with Peterson right now is turning some people off.
And look, I don't know Peterson obviously nearly as well as I know AJ because he plays 40 miles from us, and I've been down there a few times. DeBonsa is serious about being great. I can tell you that. Like, there's nothing about this kid that isn't just all in on being the best he can possibly be. BYU's not near as good as I thought they'd be. They've lost a couple of pieces. Richie Saunders out with an ACL. But he shows up every night. He wants to play every minute, every night, and he wants to be great every night. Like, for all the noise about Peterson on one side, I can just tell you from those of us that are experiencing it out here, it's as real as you possibly can get.
I mean, and like, again, he's like the show, right? And
yeah,
we've seen guys where, and of course, we've seen guys come from major programs, right? But we've also seen guys like, Steph Curry, Davidson, and wasn't that prepping him for the next level because he's going to face all the types of junk defenses in the world, and he's going to have the pressure on his shoulders to perform despite game plans being completely catered to try to stop you. I think that shows a lot about a guy's makeup to want to be in that situation. And, of course, I'll give some credit to Kevin Young, who I covered when he was assistant coach with his sons, and a really smart guy that did some great things on those Monty Williams' staff, the team that won 60 games, team that got to the NBA Finals, having that guy in your corner and sprinkling in some NBA knowledge when you're in college, that can't help. That can't hurt either.
Yeah, for sure. All right, couple of fun little things with you before I set you loose. Pat Riley Statue Day. Now,
Yeah.
I don't believe my father was invited, so I think that unfortunately that's kind of sad. With their history back at the Garden, one of the coolest experiences I ever had was being a teenager and watching Pat Riley run practices. I mean, it's always fascinating to hear the things he has to say about anything, quite frankly, not just basketball, just about life. And so, it didn't end well for us as he headed down to Miami after a really fun little situation in New York. And that rivalry between the Heat and the Knicks was just fun for a lot of years. But you were there as a statue of Pat was unveiled outside of the building in Los Angeles. What was that scene like, Dave?
The thing that really struck me, and I've been around him, here and there. It was probably the most I've spent with him in an individual setting in my career. But he is not afraid to be, I'd say politically incorrect, not in like the what's going on in the world type of way, but there are certain in today's NBA world or sports world where folks want to kind of tiptoe around stuff. And the way hearing him speak with candor about what it is to be a Laker and the expectations on you, and like, listen, it's hard and you got to win, and it can be a cutthroat business, but that's kind of what's great about coming to play for the Lakers is like, I'm putting myself in the fire to try to do that. Is great, because I think sometimes when we talk about the Lakers team that I've covered the last 8 years, I'll say that it's like you're making kind of excuses for folks and you're tiptoeing around stuff. And, at the end of the day, like, that is what the Lakers want to be about, project to be about, is like, just win, baby. And that is, I think, maybe what's lacking a little bit with the product. And I wonder if, how much his words will resonate moving forward now that, the Lakers have reshuffled their business operation, and Magic Johnson's longtime agent, Lon Rose, is now the head of business operations. And we interviewed Lon yesterday, and Lon says Magic's not going to have an official title, not going to be there day to day, but his presence will be felt. And, maybe this new era of the Lakers under new owner Mark Walter has a little bit of that Showtime feel to it, because listen, your message rings kind of hollow if you're saying we're obsessed with championships and all we want to do is get that 18th title, and then you have cycles like what this team's been in last offseason and the trade deadline. Like, you traded for Luka Doncic. That's awesome. Like that's a earth-shifting move. But what are the next things you're going to do? Because, the Showtime Lakers, like, they were all gas, no brakes.
They were. Did you say they're bringing Magic back in some sort of capacity?
Some unofficial capacity.
Okay.
Lon Rosen says his presence will be felt.
Okay. See, and we kind of ran into the same thing with Carl out here. For years, Carl would like fly into town. Karl Malone would fly into town and be like, why am I not an assistant coach? And they finally were like, okay, you are. And he was for like 2 days. And then he just went back to like these guys. I mean, look, I love Magic. Who doesn't love Magic? But I just don't think they're built for some sort of day-to-day front office job. You have to work so hard if you want to be great at that. And these guys have already worked to be great at what they were. I'm not sure any of them are built for that job day to day, or very few of them, I guess.
No, I agree. I'm just talking more like, and again, like, there is a little bit of a rah-rah to like,
sure,
we're going to do it the hard way. And,
yeah.
But just having like this doesn't pass the smell test and we need to be better, I think should help propel an organization to reach the standards that they claim to be all about.
I agree with that. Before I set you loose, I don't really okay, Luka passed up an open shot to pass it to the greatest player of the generation. I don't find it to be a topic, so I wanted to ask you about this. You know, in my space, we cover everything. So up until Christmas and maybe January, I'm pretty football centric. So I've only recently really dug in on Detroit and started watching them quite a bit. They undressed my Knicks like over and over and over. But that Pistons Spurs game the other night. Now we're going to see OKC Pistons tonight, and I don't think it's all right. Is Shea or Jalen available? I don't think they are. Right?
They're not playing.
Okay,
yeah,
so this will be a little bit of an appetizer as opposed to a full entree. But I'll tell you what, man. The more and more I watch San Antonio, the more and more I watch Detroit. I know that, and I've heard you talk about this before, and you articulate it well, and I completely agree. If I haven't seen it in the playoffs before, I have a hard time predicting that I will see it this year. Now, the Pistons did make the playoffs last year, had a good 6-game series with the Knicks. This would be a first-time go for the Spurs, but there's part of me that believes these two teams are ready to go, and they're ready to go right now.
They're tremendous, and I'm a lot higher on the Spurs than I am on Detroit. And it's not that I think Detroit is undeserving of where they are in the standings, or they aren't a team to be reckoned with. I do want to see what they do in the playoffs beyond just the prove it to me in the playoffs, but it does slow down in the playoffs. It's a lot more half court. And other than Cade Cunningham, as great as he is, and he's probably at least third on my MVP ballot right now, he was 5 for 26 against Spurs. And he's going to have to be able to create in the half court, and he's going to need other players to create in the half court. I just don't see it. Like, if you got to go and get something with 5 seconds on the shot clock, who do they have beyond him? You know, he needs to set up Jalen Duren. He needs to set up, their shooters that they have, the guys like, Duncan Robinson. I just am concerned about their offense and where it's going to come from. And that's why I like Boston a lot. And I know that there can be so much uneasiness and tension, especially if the Tatum thing doesn't go right. But I guess I'm assuming he has enough time here to get like 15 plus games in the regular season with some momentum to a team that's been playing just lights out basketball now for 2 months, and a team that will have, 4 or 5 principal pieces that won a championship a couple of years ago. Like, that's a team to watch out for. And that's not an insult to Detroit, but I like Boston more than I like them.
Yeah, totally fair. So we'll see. Bummer that tonight we won't see a full complement, but should be a fun game nonetheless. Look, man, I appreciate the time. We'll set you loose, Dave. Have a good week. We'll chat soon, okay?
All right, man. Take care.
Dave McMenamin covers the NBA for ESPN. Get him on social media at MC10. Very good at his job. We're lucky to have him on a weekly basis. Some interesting stuff there. I want to reiterate that we do not know exactly what the update is with Lowry Marketing. All we know right now is Kevin Reynolds, the new Jazz beat writer from the Salt Lake Tribune, has reported that Lowry Marketing was injured in practice today, and there will be an MRI on both his hip and his ankle. We're probably not going to see him all year no matter what. I'm just really, really hoping this is not serious, because if it is, that changes the scope of a lot of things for this team. Lowry is still the best player on the Jazz, and quite frankly, it's not even close. All right, we'll catch a break. Coming up next, down the stretch we come for the Utah women's basketball team. We're talking about a regular season finale and then hopefully a nice little run in the Big 12 tournament and maybe an NCAA tournament appearance as well. So Gavin Peterson, the head coach of the Utah women's basketball team, is our guest on the other side right here on ESPN 700. On a local perspective tonight, the Mammoth are back after their Olympic break. We'll see if Logan Cooley is part of the game tonight. Colorado in town, obviously a really good team. 7 o'clock Mountain Time on ESPN+. Utah State with a big one against San Diego State. Both Utah and BYU men's basketball off until Saturday. Utah women off until Saturday as well. And believe it or not, there's only one game left. That's right, one game left for the Utah women's basketball team. Then it's on to the Big 12 tournament. Arizona in town coming up in 3 days. 5 o'clock Mountain at the Huntsman Center. Let's get up there. And the head coach of the Utah women's basketball team is Gavin Peterson, and he joins us on a Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, Gavin. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Spence.
Appreciate the time, and we'll get to Arizona in a minute. But how much of a relief was it to go down to Colorado and get a much-needed win after you guys had dropped 4 or 5?
Yeah, it was just really proud of our team, the way they bounced back after, a rivalry loss. They could have easily let that linger, allowed that loss to become another loss, but they didn't. I didn't expect anything less than their best, and they put their best foot forward on Monday. We had a great shoot-around on Tuesday, and then, we just were resilient through that second quarter and got going in the third and kind of carried it through the fourth. And so just really proud of the team and the players, the coaching staff, for really kind of turning the page, getting that, much-needed win against a very good Colorado team on the road. So just really proud of them.
Was there a lot of urgency there? Because as you referenced, like, Colorado is good, and the losses prior to when it comes to BYU and Oklahoma State, and again, Iowa State, Arizona State, you squeezed that Cincinnati win, but it was 4 of 5. And you never like to lose to your rival. And I felt like, I don't know if urgency or being prescient for that game was adjectives you were leaning into, but I felt like that was a big game for you guys. Was there urgency, and did you express it to the team heading down to Colorado?
Yeah, I think maybe we were playing with that kind of urgency and maybe a little added weight of pressure, knowing that had we, those are big games, big moments that if we win, we position ourselves, as a potential lock for the NCAA tournament. So maybe we were, trying a little too hard, playing with a little bit of the weight of the world on our shoulders. So, and that could have come from me as well, just with the intensity and passion in which we're trying to get our kids to play with. And so we kind of actually just said, hey, guys, it's a life lesson. We could be doing everything right. We could be trusting the process, doing everything that we need to. And sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way. You have two choices. You can just abandon everything that you worked so hard to do and what you truly believe in, or you could dig down, dig your feet into the dirt and be like, no, we're going to continue to doing what we're doing, and sooner or later the results are going to bounce our way. And that's kind of all we did. We really continue to focus on going 1-0, and really focused on Colorado. And, to our players' credit, they were able to do that and not let the past or, losing those games, the 4 out of last 5, just get in the way of us trying to get the outcome that we needed in Colorado.
So I always enjoy talking to coaches from both Utah and BYU about how they approach coaching the rivalry game itself. And, everybody does it differently. Bronco Mendenhall always elected to just really not even mention Utah. It's like, okay, it's another game. Kyle Whittingham was always like, we don't lose to them. And it depends on the coach. It depends on the style. How does Gavin Peterson coach the Utah women's basketball team to play against their rival BYU?
Yeah, I think I've matured over the years, having been in the rivalry now. This was year 11. So it means a lot more because we are in the same conference and, we are jockeying for, positioning and standings and seeding for the Big 12 tournament. So it probably meant a little bit more this year. Obviously we fell short on both occasions. But as we approach it, we buy into the rivalry. We have fun with it. And our players really want to win, as do theirs. So, we turn it up a notch, as do they. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of respect for what they do down south. And, they have a tremendous team, and we're actually pulling for them tonight as they play ASU.
Yeah, you actually need a little help. That's kind of the funny thing at this point.
Yes, would love them to pull off a win.
Yes, for sure. And look, give me a thought on Arizona. And you know, you have the internet, and your players have the internet as well. So my guess is you're kind of tracking what you need to, and all you can control is what you need to do, and then hope that you get a few results. You referenced maybe BYU beating Arizona State, but you're right there where a couple of results go your way, and you're on the right side of the line you need to be on. So the Arizona game is a big game. Now it's here. It's the final home game of the season. So let's get all the details and tell me what you need to do to get that win.
Yeah, you know, Arizona has been in each and every one of their games this season. Under her first-year head coach at Arizona, Becky Burke, she came from Buffalo. But those kids are playing hard. The margin of victory in all their games are really close. They're single digits. So with that said, you know, our players have got to come out locked in, focused on the game plan, which we'll start installing tomorrow at practice, and then really just kind of leave it out there for 40 minutes. You know, we played them back in December of 2025 in our first Big 12 game of the season, a game in which we let a 20-point lead evaporate, and we ended up winning by 1. So I don't think that our kids are overlooking this game at all. I know there are the distractions of senior night. We want to make sure we honor our seniors, but when it comes time to get down to it, we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can with the same mindset that we had in Boulder. And let's go take care of business at home and get ready for Kansas City. So I don't think our kids will be overlooking anybody. I really believe we're going to try to ride this, this newfound energy after that road win against Colorado and try to ride that and get on a winning streak here.
Let's get all the details out to the community, where people can go to get tickets, tip time, and any sort of special reference senior night. Anything else you want our listeners to know?
Yeah, no, just online. You guys can go visit our website. And, it's going to be a tremendous evening where we have 4 great seniors that have given a lot to our program. And we're looking to close in on a 20-win season. So we got to get everybody in there. We got to make it a home court atmosphere and make it hard for to accomplish that mission.
Tell me specifically, I mean, look, obviously this is a team sport, and even the players that we don't see a ton during the games or take a ton of shots during the games are part of your journey, part of the practice, part of the chemistry. Yeah. But obviously, Lanny White, Maddie Wilkie, I mean, those are probably your 2 most visible. I don't want to say best. I'll leave that to you. I'll leave that to you to say best. But what have they meant, not just to this team, but to you as you're still a little bit of a new head coach, even though you've been on the job for a little while? What have they meant to you, Gavin?
Yeah, Alyssa Blank, she's been showing up for the last 3 years. She is a jack of all trades. She is somebody who, whether it's golf, pickleball, basketball, wakeboarding, or wake surfing, she can do it all. So she has a great sense of humor. She approaches every day with a great attitude, and she's a great teammate. Sam Crisp is somebody who, based on matchups, has really been able to provide us a spark. She did so at Oklahoma State, and she did so again last night at Boulder. But she's a kid who is just, showing up every day, doing whatever is needed from a team standpoint, and has put team first her entire career. And that's something I admire a great deal. She's going to law school, and I have no doubt she's going to be successful in that next chapter in life. And then, you have Maddie Wilkie, who, she's always been that reliable, great teammate. She's always been able to, play through pain, one of the toughest kids we have on the team. So we're really going to miss her on the court, but also off the court. She's been somebody who has been a huge impact in my life. My family has gotten to know her and her family really close. So we're really, really thankful that she got to come to Utah and finish her career there. And then Lonnie White, she is not only a fan favorite, but, my sister back in Hawaii, that's her favorite player. They stay in contact. Her having those ties to the Hawaiian Islands, there's a special place in my heart for that with her mom, Nicole, having those Hawaii roots. So her coming back to Utah now that I'm the head coach and, she transferred and then she came back, it just means the world to me that a kid like that left on such good terms and believed in me as the head coach, believed in our program and what our foundation and our principles were. For her to come back and have the year she's having, I'm just so proud of her. And then again, just thankful for them, being a part of our program. And I'll probably shed some tears afterwards, for sure.
I would imagine. I mean, look, these young women, for a first-time head coach, I mean, you're only as good as your players are. You're only as successful as your players are. And I hope you do this at a high level for a long, long time. But I won't speak for you. I would imagine in 20 years, when you're being inducted into the Utah Athletics Hall of Fame, Gavin, you're gonna look back on this group, right? Because they were your first group.
Yeah, it is. These even last year and this year, I don't think I'll ever forget what those kids have done for me and our program. I mean, I still. Every now and again I'll reflect, like the first week on the job last year was just a whirlwind, and it went by so fast, but I'll never forget it. So yeah, tremendous gratitude for these young women. And the reward for us coaches is not always the wins and losses. It's the 10 years down the road, getting invited to a wedding, getting a birth announcement, or them coming back for alumni weekend. Those are the cool things that never show up in a stat sheet, but coaches know that, we are 100% the winners when it comes to that part of them coming back into your life after their playing career is done. So, yeah, I consider myself very lucky, humbled, and honored to be their coach. So you're absolutely right. I will never forget these guys. One
of the weird dynamics of college athletics now, Coach, as you know, is the continuing process of making sure you're re-recruiting your own players. We know the seniors who are moving on, and look, you've got basketball left to play. So there's obviously that is your focus, but what sort of energy allocation is there now to making sure the pieces that you have on your roster that have played well for you will be back next year, in addition to your avenues in which you can add talent to the group? How much of that energy, are you exuding on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think every day is basically another day you can actually re-recruit your kids just through practice, communication, the time you spend with them, right? So that's all our focus is on right now. We are looking to finish the season strong. And then our protocol is, as soon as our season is done, we'll have individual player meetings and we'll get a lay of the land, and we'll be able to address anything that needs to be addressed. And so we'll have a great idea of what our program will look like on paper. And then when that transfer portal hits, we'll have to plug those gaps and address any needs that we need to. But make no mistake about it, we love every person that puts on a Utah uniform, and we are hoping and planning that everyone is back. Not always the case, but that is the intention, and that's what we're hoping to do and build on the momentum that we created this year.
Well, look, best of luck against Arizona. I will remind people this is your last chance on the year to see the Utah women's basketball team here in Salt Lake at home. It's 5 o'clock at the Huntsman Center. Head on up. You can watch the game on ESPN Plus, and you can hear the game here on your home of the Utes. Gavin, thanks so much for your time, sir. Have a great weekend. Best of luck. We'll chat soon, okay?
Thank you so much for having me. Always good talking.
For BYU against Arizona State. If Arizona State loses its final two games and Utah beats Arizona, the Utes would move into 8th. And that's important because you would get a first-round bye in the tournament. If you're 9th, you play the last-place team in the conference, and this year that is probably going to be Houston. They're 1-16. Quick math, that's not good. UCF is 2-14. So there you go. All right, coming up in the 5 o'clock hour of the program, final hour of the program, we'll get back to some of the news of the day today. The report from Kevin Reynolds of the Salt Lake Tribune that Larry Marketing was injured earlier today in practice and currently is having an MRI on his hip and his ankle. NFL Combine going on right now, some new mock drafts. Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu off the board in the first round. And then we'll get ready for a big night in college and pro basketball. Busy Wednesday show. We got 3 hours in the book, so we have 1 hour down. So keep it here on ESPN 700. All right, Drive at 5 time. Wednesday afternoon style, halfway through that work week, and one day closer to the weekend, one day closer to March, one day closer to spring, even though it's kind of felt spring-like for the past, I don't know, few months. Feels like spring today. 61 degrees, a little cloudy. We're going to have some sunshine throughout the course of the weekend, and we don't have anything really below 50 on the 10-day, maybe up until next Thursday. So the warm weather continues. Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're having a great work week as you're inching a little bit closer and closer to the weekend. Got a good matchup in the NBA tonight. It's Oklahoma City taking on the Pistons. So the number one seed in both conferences will do battle tonight. We're not going to see them at full strength because it's NBA basketball. You know, that's how it goes. So no Jalen Williams, no Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. In case you missed the news today, Kevin Reynolds, the new beat writer for the Utah Jazz for the Salt Lake Tribune, reports that Lauri Markkanen was injured in practice today and is having an MRI on his hip and his ankle. Certainly hoping that this is nothing serious at all. My guess is no matter what this MRI reveals, we probably have seen the last of Lauri Markkanen this season. 24 games left for the Utah Jazz. The Jazz are off tonight. They're going to be back in action against New Orleans tomorrow. New Orleans is not trying to be bad. They just are. They've had a lot of actually real injuries, and they have a really, really bad roster. So at this point, the Jazz continue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Jazz are 6th as of now in the lottery standings. Okay, so Washington, Brooklyn, Indiana, Sacramento, and the aforementioned New Orleans Pelicans are all right ahead of the Jazz. So that actually puts them at 7, excuse me. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they're right there. Now, there's a little bit of breathing room between the Jazz and the Mavericks and the Grizzlies and the Bulls. So those are the other teams that I believe as of now are unserious. Chicago has lost 10 straight. They're not even faking it anymore. Washington has elected not to play Trae Young or Anthony Davis all year, and they have not been fined. Don't ask me why. So I would include Memphis in this group. So I think at this point where I've landed is the following teams in the Western Conference are unserious about competing: Memphis, Dallas, Utah, New Orleans, Sacramento. Okay, and out east, I'm going to go this way: Indiana, Brooklyn, Washington, and Chicago. Okay, I'm going to leave Milwaukee off the list for now. But they're kind of hanging out there. I mean, a lot of people believe Milwaukee needs to show Giannis a little bit that while he sits, because he is going to sit, no fine for them, that they do have some pieces that are intriguing enough for him to stay. Because if he wants out and you got to trade him, you're trading a generational piece that has won an MVP and brought you an NBA championship. So I'm going to leave them to the side for now. So the fact of the matter is the Jazz are not guaranteed hanging on to this pick at all because they have company of teams that are trying to do the same thing they are. So, again, the Pelicans tomorrow, I don't know that the Pelicans are intentionally tanking. I just think they're a really bad basketball team that's bad at playing basketball, and that's a problem if you're an NBA team. And when you look down the list of games for the Jazz over the final 24 games, and, again, we're operating off the premise that regardless of what the MRI reveals today for Lauri, and knocking on wood, hopefully it's nothing serious, we're probably not going to see him the rest of the way at all. So it's just going to be a bunch of atrocious basketball watching the Utah Jazz the rest of the way. Nurkic out for the year with some nose thing. Jaren Jackson Jr., the knee surgery. Unfortunately, Vince Williams Jr. really did hurt himself, a torn ACL, off of what I perceive to be a pretty dirty play by Tari Eason. I haven't heard a lot of conversation about it. I don't care that he went into the locker room afterwards and apologized. He hip checked the poor kid and he tore his ACL. And Vince Williams Jr. has worked his tail off to become a good NBA player, and this is a contract year for him. It's actually a play that I think should be looked at as a result of certainly what happened, but also the intent. Will Hardy himself after the game said that is not a basketball play. So again, Jazz right there, 6-7. They've got to I didn't even mean to do that. I know that's a cool thing that the young kids are saying, but they're flirting with the 6-7 range, and anything below 8, and the pick goes to Oklahoma City. So final 24, okay? You got New Orleans, the next 2 games, Thursday, Saturday, New Orleans. Again, this is a team that is not trying to tank. They're just bad at basketball, but they've been a little bit better as of late. If the Jazz mess around and start winning some of these games, they're going to be in danger of losing this asset. Now, as we've talked about on this show, I don't love any of the teams doing what they're doing right now, but they're doing it within the framework of the infrastructure of the NBA. So, look, we've come this far, right? Right now is no time to start messing around and winning basketball games. You've been unserious for 4 years. This has been the worst 4-year stretch of Jazz basketball in the history of the organization. And you're so close to start the process of taking steps forward. So, again, operating off the premise of that's the list of the teams that are in this area with the Jazz of trying to hold on to draft capital or trying to give themselves the best shot possible of moving forward, we'll count them together. 2 games against New Orleans, a game against Washington. You got a game against Sacramento. You know what? I'll include Milwaukee. There's Milwaukee in there. Another game against Washington. You've got another game against New Orleans, one against Memphis. And I'll say that's about it. 12 of your final 24 games are against teams that you are jockeying with to hold on to your asset and give yourself the best possible chance at getting a good pick this year. So about half your games left. On a nightly basis, we're going to be talking about whether or not the Jazz are going to be messing around to try to, and eventually win the thing. It's the weirdest thing to cover a league where a third of the teams are not trying, and over the final 25 games of the season will be matched up against each other in an NBA action is fantastic. How can we lose this one? That's the goal. 2 teams playing pro basketball trying to lose. It's the weirdest thing. And half the Jazz games the rest of the way will be 2 teams trying to lose playing against each other. All right, so that's kind of the deal as we go down the stretch for the Utah Jazz. The local college basketball scene last night, not great, Bob, not great. We got some good NBA action tonight on the NCAA tournament side of things, the NCAA men's slate, I should say. Some really good games tonight featuring some ranked teams. St. John's is up at UConn. UConn has not been as good as of late. Florida is at Texas. Maryland is at Nebraska. Vandy hosts Georgia. Portland will be up at Gonzaga. Mississippi State taking on Alabama. Texas A&M taking on Arkansas. Both Utah and BYU are off until Saturday, but it is a big one for our friends up north. Utah State travels to take on San Diego State tonight for a 9 o'clock tip on FS1. Probably the 2 best teams in the league, due respect to New Mexico. And, of course, Utah State went into the pit and beat them. There's only one Big 12 game tonight. It's Kansas State and Colorado. Utah men got smoked pretty good last night by Iowa State, a result that we all thought would kind of go in that direction. Made a couple of decent runs there in the first half. They actually pulled within 2 and then couldn't really get any closer than that. It was a pretty decent night from the backcourt, but the problem is, and we saw this with Iowa State when they played BYU, Iowa State's got a bunch of long, rangy defensive players. And if your best weapon is smallish guards, you're gonna have an issue. So Terrence Brown and Don McHenry actually shot well. Problem is they couldn't get a lot of looks. Terrence went 6 of 10 and Don went 5 of 8. You love that, but those are your 2 best offensive players by far. And going against these rangy defensive players, they just couldn't get looks at the basket. Sidhu Traore, who we talked about a little bit earlier, and we're giving Sean Mooney a lot of credit here. And Riles talked about this too. You usually know what you're going to get from TB and Don, and then Keanu, more often than not, has had good games. And he was pretty good last night, Dawes was. 10 points, 12 boards. So if those are your 3 pieces that you're going to rely on as your primary offensive weapons, who's the guy that can step up and give you a little bit of an extra added punch? And when Traore has done that, they've been better, including the win against West Virginia. And he was non-existent last night, 1 of 5 from the floor, 1 of 3 from 3, had 3 points overall in 34 minutes of play. Pretty good on defense, and that's kind of his calling card. But we expected that. What we did not expect is UCF to go into the Marriott Center and absolutely curb stomp BYU. I mean, that was an ass kicking. And it was over pretty quickly. I got to the game a little bit late because I was watching some other stuff, and BYU was already down 16-4. I think it was 16-4, something like that. They go into the locker room down 24. Now, the thing about BYU this year is, for whatever reason, they get off to atrocious starts all the time. And oftentimes they have enough talent to get back into basketball games, come back, and sometimes even win it. So I figured at some point we see a bit of a run. And honestly, we really didn't until it was way too late. And if you didn't see the game and you look at the box score, you're like, well, A.J. DeBonsa had 29. He must have played well. He didn't. 12 of his 29 points were in the final 3 minutes when the game was already over. Rob Wright struggled against the length of UCF, just like he did against Iowa State. Alexei Kostic, the kid that came off the bench, probably was the most impressive player, quite frankly. Kennard Davis Jr. reverted back to the average player he's been all year. He had a good game against Iowa State. Mihailo Boskovic, who they have started, now that Richie Saunders is hurt, he was a wallflower. He did absolutely nothing. Kaba Kate, a former Ute, had another bad game. In fact, Kevin Young elected to go small at one point. He's like, we're putting AJ in the middle, and then we're surrounding him with small players. Nothing worked. And part of it was amazing shot making from UCF, but the other part of it was really atrocious effort from a BYU team who I thought was going to be much better than they are, and they've turned out to be a team headed towards an 8 or a 9 seed and potentially an early exit from both the Big 12 and the NCAA tournament if they're able to get that far. So both teams off until Saturday. We'll see if they can finish the regular season strong, and then on we go to the Big 12. In Mel Kiper's latest mock draft for ESPN, of course, a lot of people don't like ESPN mock drafts. That's fine. There are plenty out there. There are a million out there, including plenty from charlatans that just copy others. But Mel's been doing it for a long, long time. He has Spencer Fano off the board at 5 to the New York Football Giants. To be the starting tackle to protect one young Jackson Dart, who played his high school football out this way. You could do a lot worse if you're Spencer Fano joining the New York Giants. I mean, they got – look, Cam Scadaboo is awesome. I'm just afraid that I feel like he could injure himself running his head into a brick wall during an off-season workout. Like, I love the kid. I just wonder if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, the longevity on that one, not so sure about. That being said, I don't know. He's a different specimen, that Scattaboo guy. But yeah, the Giants are starting to build some positive stuff around one Jackson Dart. I think, if that's your guy going forward, the main thing now is to protect him, right? And they don't really have a left or right tackle that are. I mean, they have good starters there, but they don't have a guy that's seen as like a franchise end piece. So that's probably your next step if you believe Jackson Dart's the guy.
Yeah, I don't know that I ever thought Daniel Jones was like awesome, but
No.
we saw last year, at least for 7 or 8 weeks before he got hurt, some pretty high quality play from Daniel Jones when he had protection. The Giants feels like for years they've been lacking along the offensive line, at least top shelf talent.
No, you're absolutely right, and I'm with you. I didn't really think Daniel Jones was ever going to like jump off the page at you, but he's a competent quarterback. I just think that if you don't put the pieces in front of a guy, you're not giving him any chance. And we've seen Jackson Dart be chased around the field quite a bit. I think he's got an opportunity now with some improvement on the offensive line to show what he's got.
So Fernando Mendoza, 1 to the Raiders, obviously. At 2, the hapless New York Jets, Caleb Downs, safety from Ohio State, who's a hell of a player. They'll find a way to screw that up. Of all the dumb Jet stats from a year ago, like the leading wide receiver, Garrett Wilson, had like 450 yards. Guess how many interceptions the New York Football Jets had last year? All
0.
year. 0, not 1. They didn't have 1 interception all year. This is a team whose head coach is supposed to be like a defensive specialist.
Yeah, that's not good.
0 interceptions. So trying to solidify the defensive backfield. David Bailey, who we know very well around here from Tech, off the board at 3 to the Cardinals. And then Arvell Reese, who's a beast from Ohio State at 4. And then Spencer Fano off the board at 5. Of course, Caleb Lomu thought to be rising up a lot of boards as well. Let's kind of see where Mel has him slided at this point. Tick, 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 tick. Oh, huh. He is not in Mel Kiper's first round. That's surprising. That's the first time I have seen that as far as Caleb Lomu not being a first-round pick. I think most people anticipating that Caleb, along with Spencer Fano, will be first-round draft picks, but Mel does not have him in there. That's kind of surprising, isn't it?
Yes. As you said, you can pick and choose which mock drafts you want to put a lot of stock into. I know Mel's one of the longest tenured guys in that business. I often find myself scratching my head at his mocks, so I'll leave that there.
Let's go over to the human boat shoe, Field Yates, since I have ESPN.com up in front of me. Fano at 6 to the Browns. I swear I saw Caleb just like the other day, like a top 16 pick. Who knows? NFL Combine going on right now. Are you a combine guy at all? I feel like you do just kind of tune in a little bit.
Yeah, it's getting less and less every year as guys start to opt out and so much film is available. But
all
there
22s?
That, of course.
Nice.
But there are certain things and certain players who, right, you're not going to pay much attention to their 40, but maybe their 10-yard split. Like the very specific things on very specific players are pertinent, but I don't necessarily tune in to watch the big, long TV show.
Field Yates, who has to have Cologne, he got it. J. Crew has Caleb going off 31 to the Patriots. So there you go. All right, who wants $1 million? Don't lie, you do. One bracket, $1 million. It's the ESPN 700 at 92.1 FM $1 Million Bracket Challenge. Going live on Selection Sunday, March the 15th. Sign up today on ESPN700sports.com. Brought to you by Big Willie's, Game Day Men's Health, Intermountain Bobcat, Budweiser, the Intermountain Sportsman's Expo, Burger Fusion, and the Utah RV Super Show. Porter, before we say goodnight, what comes our way on a Thursday edition of the show?
On a Thursday, talking RSL with one Brian Dunseth. Talking some brackets with Ken Pomeroy. A little bit more Real Salt Lake, our guy Pablo Mastroeni. And then, we'll do some combine chat with Sam Bruckhouse as well.
Sweet. There you go. So a lot to do. RSL's home opener We'll be on Saturday against Seattle, so we'll catch up with Dunny tomorrow. And then tomorrow night, episode 2 of Talk and Rail over at KMYU. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you today, Craig Bolerjack, Richard Smith, Dave McMiniman, and Gavin Peterson. For any of the sound you may have missed from the show today, go to the website, ESPN700sports.com. Download the mobile app. Take us on the go. ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then if you like what we do in this space, even if you don't, and you just have some time tonight, we'd appreciate your support on the podcast side of things. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. Just subscribe, rate, review, and say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. It helps. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Wednesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Thursday show. As always, you can catch it right here on ESPN 700. All right, 3, 2, and 1. Coming up on a Thursday edition of The Drive with Spence Checketts, we're going to get you ready for RSL's home opener with RSL original Brian Dunseth and the head coach of the club, Pablo Mastroeni. We'll check in at the NFL Combine with Sam Bruckhouse. And the eyes of March are upon us. Time to fill out our brackets with the great Ken Pomeroy from KenPom.com. Thursday edition of The Drive with Spence Checketts. We go from 2 to 6 right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. Should be fine. Let's hear it. 1. Coming up on a Thursday edition of The Drive.